Hello, dear viewers. Support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it. And also, make sure you comment your thoughts. Now let's start the video. The particular warm winter's day in the Reach began with a deep, clear blue draped over the plains. Fields of late wheat nurtured on the warm winds from the Great Sea to the west, seen from miles all around, rippled in the wind like waves. Any observer would imagine themselves not on land but in the middle of a gentle swell of the ocean. Above, puffy white clouds were all that marred the sky, kinds that people like to see shapes in. But below, watched over by the gardens and whitewashed walls of Highgarden Castle, an immense clash of steel and blood played out, churning such a gorgeous landscape into the fifth hell so preached by Septons all across Westeros. Scouts had spotted the columns of the Stag King's forces within 3 days of Highgarden, not enough time to secure an escape with the vast supplies stored within the castle needed for the upcoming campaign. Lady Olenna and Sir Garland Tyrell gave the order to stand firm and give battle. If they could bloody Stannis enough, then the defeat would cripple him and end the war. As such, the bulk of the 25,000 forces gathered, and whatever small folk could be impressed, formed a series of earthen and wood redoubts in depth outside Highgarden Castle. If Stannis were to force them into a siege, then he would have to pay in blood. They expected a 3-day march. However, Stannis had marched his men rapidly, reaching the woods outside the fields hours ahead of what the Tyrell forces planned for the fight. He arranged his forces in 4 columns of infantry: Rivermen under Lord Mallister, Stormlanders under Lord Selmy, and 2 Vale columns under Sard Harry Harding and Lord Gilwood Hunter. To the right, the entirety of the cavalry gathered under Lord Jan Royce in 6 columns, prepared to cover the flank and join the infantry to storm each of the redoubts at dawn. But a skirmish between Tyrell scouts and the van of House Royce's personal command forced things to accelerate. Stannis ordered the assault at 6 in the morning, before the sun could rise. The suddenness of the attack overcame the natural defensive advantage. Hardened knights covered by intense arrow fire to overwhelm the first redoubt and slaughter the men at arms within. For Harry Harding and Lord Mallister, the assault on the second set of defenses stalled, lords bypassing them to attack forces caught in the open trying to reinforce the second redoubt. It was the cavalry that was unable to achieve a stunning success. Lord Rise butting headlong into the heavily armored knights led by Garland Tyrell. The first waves crashed into a bloody melee, Bronze Jan withdrawing his forces before they could be shattered. There was a time for an all-out assault, and this wasn't it. Under the low twilight of dawn, Harding and Mallister only just managed to extract themselves from a counterattack by Sir Horace Redwine. Pitching the Baratheon camp into disarray, Garland ordered the entire reserve of 10,000 men out of Highgarden itself to give an open battle, to take advantage of the disarray just as the sun began to emerge high in the sky. 2 hours passed, archery, duels, and cavalry skirmishes the order of the day as the Tyrells organized at the second redoubt and the Baratheons reformed at the first. Many commanders pleaded with Stannis to advance, but he refused. A move that turned out to be brilliant. Distracted by the Baratheon hosts, the 2,000-man vanguard of House Tarly wasn't spotted until just prior to the initial assault. Initially, Olenna Tyrell, watching from her tower atop Highgarden with a glass of Arbor Gold, made thanks to the gods for the first time since growing up he had finally arrived. But hope turned to bile as the Tarly host linked up with the battered Baratheon cavalry, charging at Garland's knights as the bulk of the Tyrell forces were preoccupied with the intense slaughterhouse in the second redoubt. Horse sweeping in to the south, while the Tarly, supported by the best archers the Reach had to offer, anchored the north of the flank, ready to both screen Garland and hit into the infantry from behind. If the Baratheon forces were on the verge of a breakthrough before Randyll Tarly arrived, they had just clinched it at that moment. Atop a hilltop half a mile from the battlefield, Littlefinger lowered his spyglasses, smirking as the Tyrell troops broke. Knights of the Vale joining the Towley men-at-arms in slaughtering their way through the enemy line. A decisive victory, your grace. Perhaps your finest. The praise seemed quite fawning, but it was completely deserved. An army of nearly 25,000 completely annihilated. Highgarden captured, surely the most decisive battle the Reach had seen since the Field of Fire. A horrible business. Davos stated. Necessary for the scheme of things, but regrettable. The Battle of Blackwater Bay had been enough death and carnage for one lifetime. These rustics are so inept, Stannis rolled his eyes. His leg was feeling better that day, and watching the latest triumph that the bards would sing of till the world ended had taken all the pain away. He leaned on his horse, bored and comfortable. Country bumpkins and tourney knights playing right into my hands. Nearly takes the honor out of victory. Both men glanced at Stannis, who suddenly offered a tiny grin. Nearly. Davos smiled while Littlefinger laughed. I love it. Your Grace. Your Grace. A dispatch rider ran up, sweat pouring from his face in spite of the cold. Message from Harrenhal. Stannis took the dispatch, brows furrowing. Perhaps it is my Castilian, Your Grace, Littlefinger mused. News of Lord Stark. He hasn't replied for a while. Perhaps he made battle with Cersei, Davos pondered. Whatever joy that had formed on Stannis' face died in that moment, a hard scowl forming as he crumpled the paper in his hand and tossed it to the ground. Riding off. Concerned, Davos dismounted, grabbing the piece of parchment and unfurling it. What does it say? Baelish asked. The Onion Knight gasped at the first line, tears welling in his ruddy eyes as he scanned each word. Jon, Lord Stark. The Dragon Queen has him. All rose as Queen Daenerys trolled through the double doors, entering the room with the painted table. Many of her advisors waited her there. Only when she sat down herself, the rest do so as well. Sarah Barristan sat to her right, and Tyrion on the left. Grey Worm lingered behind her as always. Varys and Daenerys sat across from Dany. A glare found its way to her former lover, but she forced it to wait. The Queen had heard of what her sellsword had did. She was angry, but more important matters needed to be spoken of. A meeting had been called in a rather urgent matter. She'd heard bits about an attack near the Bay of Sunspear. Also, the defeat Olenna Tyrell had just suffered. What's happened? Tell me, Dany said. Varys sat up, looking around at all the faces before him. The Greyjoy fleet was attacked and anchored at Sunspear. Yare, Theon, Elaria, and the Sand Snakes were all killed or captured. The room filled with sighs of despair, Barristane's fist clenched on the table. By who? Apparently by other ships with Greyjoy flags. At this time, we assume Euron Greyjoy attacked them. Unacceptable. Dany shook her head, fuming. How could this happen? It was a surprise attack, Varys explained. I don't know all the details yet, but we lost many ships and likely the ability to ferry the Dornish across the sea. Closing her eyes, Dany couldn't believe what she was hearing. Tyrion spoke up. Can we not send our other ships? We don't have enough, Barristan said. Besides, we'll need them to carry our other soldiers. If we send the majority of our ships to Dorne, our armies will be stranded elsewhere. Shit, Tyrion huffed. He stroked his hairy chin, hoping that would assist an idea to flow to his brain. It gets worse, Varys continued. Olenna Tyrell was soundly defeated by Stannis, betrayed by Lord Randyll Tarly, allowing him to practically annihilate our army in the Reach. I was told the Tyrells stood no chance. The Queen of Thorns is being held captured, but I have heard Garland may have escaped. Her eyes shut tightly. My allies, gone. Just like that, Daenerys said, her voice just like a whisper. Garland Tyrell is no help without an army behind him. Tyrion added, Isn't he still our ally? Missandei asked. Yes, but we have no way to reach him. If he's smart, he's on a boat across the narrow sea. It's only gone bad to worse since we landed here, Daario said, shaking his head. Should have stayed in Meereen. Daenerys had often thought about this lately. What if she had just stayed in Meereen, where she was loved, though before she left, even there, the air was just a hostile. We can't look back, only forward. If I look back, I am lost. A pull had brought her to Westeros. Beyond mere will, a pull indescribably had brought her to these shores, and she would not question it. What are we to do now? Missandei sounded off. What's our next move? We should send a raven to Dorne, Barristan said. Get in touch with Arianne, see if we can count on her. Even if we can, she can't help us, Tyrion answered, pursing his lips. We can't get the army here. Perhaps we should focus on other allies, Missandei suggested. Who exactly are you speaking of? Tyrion said, looking at her with a curious gaze. But before she could respond, he answered his own question, waving his hand dismissively. He'll never go for it. Not after what's happened. It's impossible. I think it's worth looking into, Missandei argued. Could someone clue me in? Daario scoffed from across the way. It seemed clear to Dany who they were thinking of. She shared the same assessment that Tyrion mentioned, but given what's happened elsewhere, she may need him more than she realized. I believe it may be worth a try, she told Tyrion, then glanced at Missandei. If I'm not mistaken, we're talking about Jon Stark, Ser Barristan asked. Yes, Tyrion sighed, feeling as if it truly could be an insurmountable task. Given what's happened to him lately, I don't know if it's possible. What if we send a significant amount of grain to the north? As a sort of peace offering, send the sort of message that their lord won't be harmed, Missandei said, raising her eyebrows. Though that's already a lie. Despite that, it may be that the north is our only option, Varys added, his voice to the noise. No one else may jump to our side after Olenna. I believe maybe worth a try, Daenerys surmised. Tyrion cleared his throat. Let me send a raven to Lady Sansa. I may not be her favorite person, but someone familiar may convince her of our earnestness, he shrugged. Then again, she may be more inclined to spit in our faces than Lord Stark. Dany sighed. We have nothing more to lose. I will allow the grain to be sent. A wise choice, Your Grace, Missandei smiled. We shall see, Tyrion shrugged. Seeing as we've come to a conclusion, Varys stood. I've things to attend to. He looked to Daenerys for permission to leave, who gave it in the form of a nod. As the spider left, Daario also stood. I need to tend to my men. Commander Naharis. Daario halted in his tracks. You are not to leave. For a split second he grinned, thinking that she was hoping to rekindle their affair. But a turn found Missandei seated beside the queen and Ser Barristan leaning against the wall behind her. Even with the hand of the queen pin, a Kingsguard was always a Kingsguard. Please, have a seat. He raised an eyebrow as Daenerys stared at him, but Daario complied. There was a bit of a tense silence as the two locked eyes. Daario blinked first. Yes, Your Grace. I am told you disobeyed my orders regarding our prisoner. Daenerys held up a hand. Expression blank, but eyes sharp and piercing. Don't try to deny it. I have both Lord Tyrion and Lady Missandei's first-hand knowledge of your disobedience. Knowing that any half-cocked story would just piss her off, and not in the good way, Daario simply leaned back, rolled his eyes, and scoffed. Sure, I did have him roughed up a bit. This time, it was Missandei who scowled. A split lip, black eyes, massive bruises, broken nose, and likely cracked ribs do not count as roughed up a bit, Commander Naharis. With all due respect, my lady, I don't answer to you. But you answer to me, Daario, Daenerys cut in, fire in her voice, even as she tried to rein it in. I told you personally that he was not to be harmed. No one knows where Stannis is. They kept it from everyone but Lord Stark. Dany pinched her nose in frustration. Let me down there. I'll get it out of him. Tyrion shook his head. It's worthless to try. He'll never tell. Even with torture. There will be no torture. He's too valuable. The imp nodded while Daenerys scoffed at Dany's comment, but said nothing. He's not some lord who wants money or power, though. Everyone wants that, my queen, Daario answered. She shook her head. No, he's different. Seven hells. Even Dany wasn't sure of anything anymore regarding Jon Stark. Find out what he wants. What I could offer to make him bend the knee, she told Tyrion, and Daario, he doesn't like you. He grinned. The feeling is mutual. Dany snorted at the comment. Drogo used to spill a lot of secrets when he was mad. Get him riled up, but do not hurt him. I want Lord Stark alive and unharmed. Are we clear? The order was explicitly given, and he disobeyed. A huff. You needed to know where Stannis was, and I did try to find out before these two stopped me. Ser Barristan was furious. If you thought with your head instead of your cock, you'd realize Jon Stark is not a man we can afford to lose. What can I say? He smirked. I'm not a patient man when helping out my queen. With his smile trained at her, the same cocksure one that had once been charming. Daenerys felt disgusted. You disobeyed my orders, and therefore I could find you guilty of treason against the crown. The look on her face showed she was completely serious. He scowled. Treason? Really? A dry laugh left his lips. The bastard. His name is Jon Stark, Lord of Winterfell. Barristan bristled. Show some respect. The bastard is your enemy, my queen. One that very nearly destroyed your army and killed your dragon. She leaned back, crossing her arms. He knows exactly what Stannis was doing, and if I had gotten it out of him, perhaps, Olenna Tyrell would have survived. Barristan shook his head. She was stabbed in the back by the Tarleys. Traitors. He remembered Randall Tarley, an old goat with a stick in his ass. It truly didn't shock him. Unless you were to go back 4 weeks, nothing could be done. Daario rolled his eyes again. Do what you did with the Masters. Kill one of the fuckers that defies you. The rest will fall in line. This is not Westeros, you insolent whelp. The old knight slammed his fist on the table. Jon Stark is one of the most popular men in all of Westeros. Outside of the Lannister High Command, he's practically the incarnation of the warrior in their eyes. If Varys' little birds are to be believed, kill him and her grace will never break the wheel. What use is that, if you lose? If you seem weak, his eyes shifted back to Daenerys, softening, the same look as he had given her in Meereen, when she had broken off their affair. I do what is necessary for you, my queen, only for you. He silently pleaded for her to understand, for the same affection to return to her eyes as he had seen during their nights together in her bedchamber. But that affection was not present, only a cold anger. There was a man that thought the same. A man that gave me his loyalty and love. His name was Massador, and you executed him for committing murder and violating my direct orders. Do you not remember? Daario smirked. And that decision almost tore Meereen apart. Did it not? I know you won't do the same to me. Far more loyal and valuable am I to your cause. In this you are right, Daario. You bring me battle-hardened troops and a record of loyal and exemplary service. But what you did is worse than what Massador did. He died as a matter of principle to show I would not be defied, whereas you could cost me everything if you harmed Jon Stark again. She cut him off. No, I've heard enough. You disgust me. I will not let you even come close to Jon Stark. Taking me off his interrogation details, am I? Yes, Missandei stated flatly, with a steel not normally seen in former slaves. I am to take charge of his upkeep from now on, reporting directly to her grace. Jon Stark is an enemy, but also a valuable hostage, and a High Lord entitled to respect. This made him chuckle. Those that would slit your throat as soon as look at you aren't entitled to respect. You knew that when you took Meereen, but fail to see that now. You've grown soft, Daenerys. A mistake. Fire flashed in her eyes. We are not lovers anymore, Daario, nor will we ever be again. You will never speak my name in my presence again. She drew back a bit when he nodded, cowed for the first time this meeting. I will not kill you, Daario. You are loyal in a way, and you've served me quite well until now. But I cannot overlook what you did. Now a smirk graced her lips. The grain fleet that will sail to White Harbor, you are to command it. He figured he didn't hear her right. Pardon, your grace? The shipment of grain I will give to the north. You are to take it there. You are going to deliver it to the Northers, and if the Lady Sansa Stark is in White Harbor, you are to fall to your knees, proclaim your fealty as a servant of the Queen and the Queen's subjects, and beg for her to take the gift as a token of my devotion to my people. Both Barristan and Missandei hid smirks of their own. Are we clear? So I'm to be a glorified merchant? Merchant? She thought about it. In a manner of speaking, yes. Perhaps that will teach you some humility. Ever since you murdered your commanders and snuck into my tent, you've been lacking that. Knowing he was not getting out of this, Daario sighed and rose, bowing. Your Grace, turning to leave right before he would pass through the doorway, he looked back at her. Jon Snow will be the death of you. I hope you realize that. She reacted, not merely barking out in Dothraki. You better learn your lesson from this, Daario. She turned to the Blood Riders. Confine him in his room for today. Then see to it that he gets on board the grain ships. Also, she thought for a moment, had he shown even a bit of remorse, she may have been somewhat lenient. Cut off his finger. He needs to learn the value of obedience. He scowled, but left with the Dothraki trailing him, door slamming behind him. Letting out an exhale she didn't know she had been holding in, Dothrax pinched the bridge of her nose. How did it come to this? Barristan placed a hand on her shoulder. That likely wasn't the first time someone tried to exceed your orders to impress you, and it won't be the last. Love, gold, influence. They'll want something and would do anything for you to get it. Sensing a silence seething in the old night, Daenerys spoke up. You disagree with my decision. I think you'll need to make a better example of him. Not kill him. That would indicate you are not loyal to your own men, but you're right, which is why I ordered them to cut off his finger. Gods, why did the sellsword have to complicate her current situation more? Make sure he gets the message, as do the rest of my combat commanders. If you can't do the deed, have my blood riders do it. They'll want to chop off more than his finger, most likely. Dany nodded. Just Make sure he can still fight, and hang the sellswords that he used in disobeying me. They were expendable at this point. She had done so previously for a Dothraki and second son, who raped a woman at Duskendale. Didn't cause any disobedience or disloyalty among her men. Make sure everyone sees it. At once, your grace. Bowing, Barristan left the painted table. Now it was just her and Miss Marndy. The translator had stood, arms crossed and staring down at Dandy. Eyes closed and leaning back, the queen nevertheless felt the eyes boring down on her. Do you have something to say as well, Miss Marndy? Permission to be frank. You know you can always speak your mind with me. With all they had been together, it was insulting that she'd have to ask. Miss Missandei nodded. You fucked up badly. Her words were blunt and cold. And you should have executed him. Next time he does something like this, I will not hesitate. She gestured to the painted table. Reach gone, Dorn a mess. I can't afford any more losses. Much as I wish it weren't true, he's basically to his men what Bittersteel was to the Golden Company. Perhaps therein is the problem. Robb Stark, from what Tyrion had told her, was sent into the arms of Walder Frey because Rickard Karstark held the loyalty of his bannermen, not the king in the north. I will have to secure the loyalty of the second sons to myself. Her best friend didn't see the shades of gray. You should have taken the chance. Jon Stark is worth more than him, and I hope you didn't destroy your chance at getting his support. A groan left Daenerys' mouth, a bit surprised by her friend's words. Dario's misdeeds are on him, not me. I ordered that Lord Stark be treated with kid gloves. Doesn't matter. Someone has to be honest with her. You are the queen, therefore the responsibility rests with you if one of your subordinates screws up. I know you didn't intend it or wanted it, but Dario's actions ultimately are on you. Closing her eyes again, Daenerys felt a deep ache in her skull. You're right, pushing out of her seat. The Dragon Queen stepped away from the painted table, staring out at the gentle waves of Blackwater Bay. I should have seen this coming. He and Lord Stark hate each other, and I've sensed a zealousness in him, as if he thinks he knows better for what's right for me. Daario does not work well on a leash. He's never disobeyed me before. She bit her lip. I should have had Tyrion do it alone, or Grey Worm. The Nathi translator had seen many rulers in her time in chains. All of them held a great burden, but for Dynasty it seemed to be increased. The weight of the world on her shoulders. A woman of the greatest power, yet also with the greatest compassion. Both combined, they could engulf a person. Drown them. Did you have to attack the Northerners head-on? Couldn't you treat with them first? You heard the military considerations, Miss Missandei. We couldn't wait, not with Stannis marching against us. Her head was throbbing, Daenerys wishing she could be flying atop Drogon, letting the solitude of the skies calm her. All I truly have is solitude. Stannis declared war on me, and they were a military target. I don't discount that, Your Grace. Everything you did was correct. But was it truly wise? Daenerys pressed her hand against the cool stone. Do you think it wasn't? Against the Masters, not at all. Against either of the usurpers, no. You spared the prisoners, that shows your magnanimity. But the leader of the northern host is Jon Stark. An entirely different issue. Entirely. Perhaps you should have been more guarded in your attack. I cannot be what I am not, Miss Missandei. Daenerys didn't bother to turn around. I am a dragon. I must be a dragon. Forgive me if I do not truly understand the blood that flows through your veins, but I have seen you with your children. A dragon isn't just fire and blood. Dragons don't plant trees, but that wasn't necessarily true. Aegon the Conqueror had created something no one else had. The Valyrian Dragon Lords had forged the greatest empire in history. I've lost my army in the Reach. The Dornish lords have been slaughtered. Ygritte Joy's forces have been slaughtered. Cersei Lannister has the Iron Throne, and Stannis has the rest of Westeros eating out of the palm of his hand. And all that I've done, the moment of triumph, a shining victory, stunning in scope just in the immediate aftermath, now with the fog of war lifted from the rest of the Seven Kingdoms, it was in a different light. All I've done is defeat one of the Stag King's armies that's turning into both an albatross around my neck. She hit a fist against the stone wall. Why couldn't he just bend the knee? Walking beside her, Missandei leaned her hip against the wall. Would he have managed to unite the dispirited northern lords, bring the free folk south of the wall, and earn the respect of the Riverlands? Vale, and Stormlands, had he been someone who would give in at the earliest opportunity. Daenerys looked up, violet eyes glassy and sad as they met Missandei as, "Let me put it another way, Your Grace. Would the Unsullied, the freedmen of Slavers Bay, would myself have chosen you as our queen, had you looked like the same type of conqueror that would, as you say, been part of the wheel? My goal is to break the wheel, Missandei." Daenerys scowled. "How dare you say I am part of what I want to destroy?" She shook her head, dismissively. "You and I both know that that isn't true." Reaching up, Missandei clasped her shoulder, hoping to offer at least some form of empathy and understanding. "The lords of Westeros. They see only their own gain. If they can get what they want from Stannis, then they'll go for Stannis. I may not be a political expert, but I know enough to see that true." "I need allies," Daenerys said softly, a small smile on the translator's face. "Jon Stark, I only know what I saw for but a moment, but he is more like you than you would care to admit. A man that isn't like the others. One with honor." "Honor, what has that done for me, Missandei?" "I am here because you have honor, have a sense of justice that no other had." Leaning forward, offering Daenerys a comforting hug, she felt the queen finally seem to relax. "He is the ally you need," she began, pulling back. "But the enemy you have, perhaps you should try to make him see what we all see in you, lest you paint yourself as the monster Stannis and Cersei proclaim you are." Another rainstorm blanketed Dragonstone, a bristling gale that sent sheets of water against the stone walls and cliffs of the island, primal howling reminding Daenerys of mournful dragon cries, of how Rogiegal and Viserion cried for their mother as she chained them in Meereen. Such memories pained her. "If I look back, I am lost." She found him nestling in the driest portion of the cell, avoiding the dripping of water through the more exposed parts. Stannis may have been a strong lord from all that she heard, but the conditions of the castle's dungeon didn't seem to be high on his list. Now, the Dragon Queen had the island, and she had more pressing matters to attend to. But part of her resolved to have him move to a drier cell. Daenerys did not know why she was here, why she was alone without Tyrion or Missandei or Grey Worm or her Blood Riders, alone with the enigmatic Lord of Winterfell. The White Wolf, Stannis Baratheon's greatest field commander, that alone dictated she had to despise him, but she didn't. He angered and frustrated her, though not enough to hate. Seemingly noticing the new presence, Jon Stark tried to rise. Unfortunately, his now beaten and bruised body wouldn't allow. A low curse flew through his lips. Wincing hard, blinking away his sleep, gray eyes quickly found her, boring into her, sending an electric tingle down her system. Daenerys fought to stay firm, to not give him an inch. Aside from the light of the singular lantern, nothing else illuminated the room. Dany rested her hands on the bars, laying her eyes on Jon's hard countenance, giving nothing away. He laid on the floor, pulling a ragged blanket tighter around him. They just looked at each other for a while, neither of them saying anything to the other. Dany began to wonder why she'd decided to come see him in the first place. She nearly jumped out of her skin when Jon broke the silence. "What are you doing down here?" "I just finally fell asleep." His voice was cold, yet clearly curious. "I was just wondering that myself," Daenerys said, equally as cold. She paused for a few moments before speaking again. "Lord Tyrion, my hand. He suggests that, over time, the longer you spend time in this cell will loosen your tongue. You believe that?" "My hand is a clever man. Even you wouldn't be able to deny that," Dany responded. "But I've noticed he sees the best in people." "Do you?" "Not particularly, but there's something about you, Jon Stark," Dany said, seemingly leaning in. "He is more like you than you would care to admit." She appeared to be wanting to confess something, but she immediately bit her tongue and backed away. "What does Missandei see in you?" Even in the darkness, Jon's raised eyebrows were glowing. "Is that why you came without your guards? Think you'll get more from me alone?" Daenerys said nothing, giving nothing away but a sense of awkwardness. "Quite unexpected, especially from the Mother of Dragons. Don't you think that I could be a threat, take you as a hostage, and escape?" Daenerys just stared at him. "That's hardly possible, in your condition." For the first time in years, she had met someone who had disconcerted her. It both feared and intrigued her. "I could manage," Jon said. "Without your dragons, I doubt you'd be too much trouble. And the one I met seems to like me." He couldn't help but offer a small smirk. Dottie bristled. Who do you think you are? Jon Stark, Lord of Winterfell, the White Wolf, Master of War for Stannis Baratheon, and so on, he replied. You know how I am. I don't believe I fully do. I don't know you. The ally I need, the enemy I have. Most lords I've met are easy to read. Gold, power, vengeance. I know what they want, but you're different. I have no idea what you want. I want out of this cell. I want to go home. Her eyebrow raised. That's it? He was not about to confess about the army of the dead to her. I want peace for the North and the wildlings. We've suffered too much, and I really want out of this cell. Snark aside, the fact that he asked for something selfless endeared him slightly to her. Was Missandei spoke of? Had it been reversed, she would have said the same about the slaves. That could be arranged. If I bend the knee, Jon shook his head. It's not an unreasonable thing to ask, Lord Stark. Think about your people. Jon shook his head. You don't understand what Stannis has done for me. I can't betray him. I won't, especially not in exchange to help you. Hands tightening around the bars, Dany gritted her teeth. She felt fire boiling up in her, rearing to leave her mouth, as fire. How could Missandei see him and I as alike? Stannis will lose, she hissed. You bowing before him only prolongs this war and the suffering that will come of it. Jon felt her heated gaze, rolling over to fully face her, though it intensely pained him. He needed to rise to the occasion of meeting her, not allowing himself to back down. Even going as far to stand, shaking like a leaf. The blanket fell off his back, exposing the litany of scars abounding across his chest, along with bandages and bruises left by Dario and his friends. Even his face still looked a tinge of purple. Jon's feet carried him close to bars where Dany stood. She didn't move away as he approached. Face reddening, jaw clenched, Jon spoke up, angrily. You killed a lot of my friends. A lot. If you expect me to just lay down before your feet, you truly don't know a damn thing about me. My Stark honor means much more to me than my life. Nothing will ever change that. Daenerys cocked her head to the side, didn't retreat an inch. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to hurt your friends, to add even one more soul to the death and killing. She closed her eyes, regaining her composure. But I must take back what is mine. Unfortunately, you and your friends stood in my way. You still stand in my way. After coming so far, so close to dragging this damn world from the shit it is in, I cannot allow myself to be stopped. You can either get out of the way, bend the knee, or continue to fuel my ire, and you just might get burned. Jon laughed, then rested his own hands on the bars for support. You almost scared me. Almost. I won't be bullied. Not by anyone. Even a dragon. Is that all you see me as? Her fists clenched at her sides. It shouldn't come down to bullying, Lord Stark. Why was he being so damn stubborn? It just didn't make sense to Daenerys. You should be smart, bend the knee out of your own accord. I bring fire and blood to my enemies, but bread and freedom to my friends. Did you become Maesif from fire and blood alone? Sarah Barristan's words stuck to her, calming her fire. Looking back at him, Jon's gaze was less angry, more searching, curious. Bread and freedom. Maester Aemon spoke so highly of his niece. Did he realize something that I just haven't? I heard about how you freed the slaves of Essos, a noble purpose, only for you to do the exact opposite in Westeros. The exact opposite? Lest you paint yourself as the monster Stannis, and Cersei proclaim you are. Here Jon Stark was, proving Missandei correct. I believe you should know that I ordered a significant amount of grain to be sent to White Harbor. Is that so? Jon snorted a bit. Truly, your sister knows you're here. I've sent it as a gesture of good faith, of peace. How thoughtful of you, Jon said a snarky tone. You've no friends there. Sansa would probably prefer it be tossed out than take an offering from the Dragon Queen. Do you truly believe that Daenerys knew of people so mad and petty that they would do something like that? The Starks, Jon, they didn't seem like that. Perhaps in the fever dreams of idiots, but not to her. That a kingdom paid with war, winter, and famine would reject needed food and supplies. Standing up straight as much as he could through the pain, Jon finally sighed. No. He pushed himself off the bars, hobbling back to where he could sit. Thank you for helping my people. It's what his father would have done, honored a good deed even from an enemy. But unlike his father or Robb, he wouldn't take it with his eyes closed. I'm still stumped as to why. Daenerys blinked. Why what? Why you would bother to feed us? The North can give you nothing. Why would you give a damn about us once we weren't a threat to you anymore? I don't want to force your people to obey me. I will, if I must, but that isn't what I want. She looked away. None of this bloodshed and death was ever what I wanted. What do you want? My birthright, the Iron Throne. Keep saying that, how the throne belongs to you. Seems your claim to that damn thing rests entirely on your father's name. Jon surmised with a shrug. You can try to butter up my people all you want. Nevertheless, they won't forget what you've done to them. The North remembers. If you force them into submission, they will never truly follow or obey you. They follow me right now. They follow Sansa, because they have to. If claiming the North is something you truly want, then you will have to win their support. Not ask for it, they won't give it. They hate you. Send all the grain you want. It won't change anything if you aren't worth following. She met his eyes, not backing down. And who is worth following? The same people who keep grinding the small folk between their wheel in a quest for power. Ani leaned in closer. Everyone says you're an honorable man that cares for his people. I saw that on the field. Her voice softened. Join me, Jon Stark. Bend the knee and we can break the wheel. Do for Westeros what I did for the people of Astapor, Yunkai, and Meereen. For a moment, Jon thought she was being sincere, the goddess among men. Her beauty legendary. He'd be a fool not to admit it. If things were different, he shook his head, wincing at the pain in his shoulders. It doesn't matter what you say, doesn't change what you've done. And this, he pointed to his bruises. This part of breaking the wheel? Gonna have your sellsword flay me like the Boltons used to do too? Dany huffed, taking in his words, seemingly advice. She watched as Jon turned from her, going back to sit down. They just stared at each other for a while before Dany spoke again. It's unfortunate. Unfortunate? He snarled, anger coming out of nowhere, eyes blazing heat that even made Dany flinch. Seeing that, he took a deep breath. Your sellsword almost killing me was unfortunate. Miss Yengi's words from before burned in her mind. Proud as she was, Yengi nevertheless felt remorse course through her. She truly did fuck up here. I apologize for what happened to you. He eyed her quizzically, almost stunned, clearly not expecting that. I didn't mean nor desire for Dangio go that far. Well, he did, Jon frowned. You sent him to me anyway. What he did was against my orders, and he has been disciplined. The men who beat you have been put to death. Forgive me if I don't take your word for it. You can see their bodies if you like. I'm sure the Unsolid can escort you to see them. Make it happen then. He wasn't finished. And Dario? Exactly what he inflicted on you. There was silence, Jon regarding her sincerity. At least I know now you're not a sadist. Foolish, perhaps. Prone to anger and trusting the wrong people. But not inflicting pain for pain's sake. He shrugged. I've known people like that, killed many of them. How hard has his life been? It appeared Dainty didn't know anything about the enigma that was Jon Stark. It was a mistake on my part to allow that to happen. I'll see to it that a maester or one of my Dothraki healers tend to your injuries. Daddio disobeyed my orders, but the responsibility resides with me. It would be her burden to bear, and foe or not, this man didn't deserve the same torture she inflicted on the masters and the Khals. Lady Missandei will be in charge of your care from now on, and she will report directly to me. He regarded that. She doesn't look like a normal member of any small council, but I seek advice from wildlings, so I suppose I cannot complain. Daenerys couldn't help but nod. Lord Stark may have been the son of a Lord Paramount, but he held as unconventional life as she had. Oh, before I leave this island, I'll be killing him, Daenerys. I hope you don't mind. That did get a small smirk out of the Queen. I might like to see you try. He literally almost fought her army to a standstill. Let me out of the cage, and you will. But her desires didn't make her a fool. Her remorse for Dario hurting him didn't make her a fool. He was still an enemy. Can't imagine you actually think I'd let you out right now, Daenerys shook her head. I don't know what you'd do. I'd get my sword, kill the sellsword, and leave. Just Dario? You'd just kill him? Oh, I could kill you. Perhaps I should. He crossed his arms, gritting his teeth a bit. I don't kill women, but perhaps I could make an exception. End the war. I suppose that's why you'll leave me in here until my bones are dust. It'd only be natural, Dany replied. given the circumstances, except you won't get the chance. And I don't intend on dying anytime soon. But yes, part of the reason I leave you behind bars is simply because you are an anomaly. I haven't the slightest clue what would happen if you got free. I've no doubt you'd kill many of my people in your escape attempt. You're dangerous, but also is why you're here. I suppose we're at a stalemate, then, Jon huffed, crossing his arms, even though it pained him. I won't give you what you want. You won't give me what I want. I suppose so. You're smart, Jon said suddenly, after a long silence. Locking me up here on Dragonstone. You could have killed me on the spot, but I'm more valuable to you alive. That's true. You are more valuable alive. I'd advise making choices that help you stay that way. Jon Stark, Dany replied plainly. After that, she turned to leave. Though she stopped once, Jon began speaking again. I've seen things you wouldn't believe. Things that need to be defeated. Terrible things. He shivered in spite of himself, remembering the cold. Remembering how the icy hands gripped his skin. Everyone will need to come together if we're going to survive. What could honestly make the indomitable wrath of the North shiver? The cell was cold, but he was steadfast before. She was intrigued. I don't wish for you to be my enemy, Jon Stark. Weight of everything on her shoulders, she seemed to deflate, hoping that the tension could be gotten rid of, hoping that she found the opening with the Warden of the North. When I take the Iron Throne, the North could have my undying support against anything. Stannis was going to help me, Jon began again. He saw the threat personally. Standing once more, Jon approached the bars. Anger gone from his gray eyes, now pleading, seeming to pierce into her soul. Dany simply stood there, unable to move for an interminable moment before finally averting her gaze. Send a raven to him, she heard him say. Treat with him. See if you two can come to an understanding. I trust that he will want my safe return. Perhaps we both can get what we want. Turning halfway to face him, Daenerys replied, Perhaps. Before strolling off into the darkness of the hall before her, leaving Jon all to himself, with only his thoughts to accompany him. Everyone was gathered in the courtyard of Highgarden. All of noble blood, even bastards, stood under the collection of flaming stag banners of House Baratheon of Dragonstone and woodsman banners of House Tarly, of both Hornhill and Highgarden. The decision having made to award Randyll Tarly's family both great castles, knights in their full plate armor, Vale and Riverlands, lords in their woolen tunics and leather trousers, vindicated Stormlands and gloomy Reach lords in their silk and cotton finery. Only Lord Garland of House Terrell was missing, though not from lack of trying by the stags and woodsmen. Fully armed men-at-arms stood guard, crossbowmen watching from the battlements with their weapons pointed at the ready. No chances would be taken today. At the trumpet of the herald, the entire gathering fell to their knees as King Stannis, first of his name, emerged from the keep. Walking tall and proud, leg close to healing, not that one could tell based on the sullen grimace he always wore. Beside him was his trusted retinue. Ciridevos Seaworth of Cape Wrath, hand of the king with a look of worry on his stubbly beard and bald head. Queen Cirices, almost surreal in her return to the castle in which she had spent much of her childhood. Lord Randyll Tarly, Warden of the South, face passive and grouchy, wishing he was anywhere but here. And lastly, ahead of the king, if one could believe it, the Lady Melisandre, smirk formed on her lips as her fiery red dress and dark red hair paved the way as would a torchlight. Silently, they made their way to the raised dais. Overlooking the courtyard and the second platform, this one structured to hold a very different type of gathering. Bring the prisoner, Stannis proclaimed, only with 3 of his companions. Melisandre, having journeyed to the second platform for reasons obvious. It didn't take long for the bannermen to emerge from the dungeons surrounding the most valuable hall of the Battle of Highgarden. Eyes widened in surprise at the sight of Olenna Tyrell. The indomitable Queen of Thorns, de facto ruler of the Reach for longer than most gathered here had been alive, she looked nothing like what was remembered. Normally swathed in the best of imported Marish lace and Lysine silks, all had been stripped away to reveal a slight old woman, hair as white as snow, skin wrinkled and gaunt form hobbled by age and gout. Yet still she stood proud as a mighty noblewoman, meeting the eyes of every lord and lady she passed. Those of the Reach averted their eyes in shame, some younger knights jeered, but that was put down by the other lords, stoic and respectful. Eventually, she reached the platform, slowly climbing up the steps to come face to face with the hooded executioners and the smirking Red Witch. "Welcome, Lady Tyrell," Melisandre said. "I hope you can accept the serenity of what is about to happen. To be accepted into the bosom of the Lord of Light is the highest honor." "Oh, do shut up," Olenna shot back as the executioners hauled her to the stake and pyre. "We both show what the bloody hells this is for, and it's no holy gobbledygook." Melisandre merely smiled, eyes finding her king. Wordlessly, Stannis left his queen and his warden of the south as he and Davos made their way towards the pyre. "I don't like this," Davos murmured, shaking his head, hot on Stannis' heels. "She is your most important hostage." "She's a worthless old woman," Stannis shot back. Hatreds of the siege of Storm's End still not healed. Garland, maybe, but no one cares about her in the long run. Davos still wasn't convinced. "It's not right. It must be done," the stag replied quickly as they reached the platform. "A message to the Dragon Queen. She'll know now that I'm a force to be reckoned with." Guards stepping back to make way for their king. Stannis' eyes met Melisandre's. "The offering is ready for the prince who is promised, my king," she said, red eyes sparkling. He nodded. "Good." Without another word, Stannis approached the now bound Olenna. "So here we are." "Yes, here we are," Olenna replied. "You know my wish is for your son to have been here." She knew about the siege of Storm's End. "Yes, I know. I may hate your family, but I respect it. Any last requests?" "I'm an old woman. I've known this day would come. The end. I'd hoped not so soon, though. I had many things left to do." The light seemed to go out of her eyes, seeing as I will no longer be able to carry those things out. "I'm angry. Very angry. I can only hope that it will all catch up to you too, Stannis. But before you die, make sure Cersei's long gone. But before she goes, tell her what I told you." A sickly grin formed on her wrinkled face. "I'd like her to know it was me. Ironic, you were the instrument that the Lord of Light used. Burning the blood-engorged leeches, Walder Frey dealt with Robb Stark, Euron Greyjoy dealt with Balon, and Olenna took care of Joffrey." His reaction was nonetheless surprised. Stannis hated the little bastard just as much as anyone. "Anything else?" Sighing as her lifetime of work and struggle was soon to end, Olenna allowed herself to relax for the first time in decades. "Remember, Stannis, you think the fire yours, you think it your champion, you love to call it your own, but there is only one who can truly call it that. I'm glad you understand who I'm talking about." Her eyes twinkled. "Don't worry, you'll meet her soon enough. I suspect our two roles will be reversed." Her green eyes opened, piercing into his. "By now you must think yourself invincible. You'll see soon enough how weak you are. You will get burned." Scowling, Stannis turned away, motioning to Melisandre to get it over with as he and Davos began to make their way to the royal platform. The Red Woman now took center stage, eyes flickering from Olenna to every lord and lady within the crowd. "We all must choose man or woman, young or old, lord or peasant. Our choices are the same." No one spoke. No one moved aside from the king, who took his place on the first platform alongside his queen. "The choice of light or darkness, good or evil. We choose the true God or the false." Many of the Reach Lords, hell, most lords, felt themselves chafe, deprived of the knowledge of the free folk, the paranoia of the northerners. Only those that had journeyed north of the wall knew the certainty of the Lord of Light. Discomfort settled within them, but Stannis had won. His steel overpowered them, and his will ruled them. Melisandre took a torch from the executioner, stepping towards the pyre. "Lords of the Reach, there is only one true king, one true prince that will bring the dawn." Stannis puffed up, smiling softly. Not realizing that Melisandre had been intentionally vague, "Here stands your lady, defeated by the grace of the Lord of Light. She has sided with the Queen of Lies, and now you shall behold the fate of those who choose the darkness." Soaked in pitch, the wood ignited almost immediately as Melisandre lit it with the torch. Stannis' smirk growing. "Your darkness will not survive the light." "Dragon Queen," he murmured to himself. Sully smiling zealously beside him. "Gods have mercy on her," Davos breathed, turning away. Rhaenzel, close to him, only shrugged. "She made her choice. She chose wrong." Pyre suddenly erupting high, tongues reaching up to lick at Olenna's feet. Melisandre stood back as the first pained squirms left the Queen of Thorns. The night is dark and full of terrors. The night is dark and full of terrors. The flames danced upward until they ran over Olenna's legs. Just seconds later, the fires raced to the sky, engulfing Lady Tyrell entirely, making it impossible to recognize who it was under the heat. Not a quick death. Many of the onlookers turned away from the execution. From her quarters high in the keep, Shireen looked away just as Olenna's screams began to boom across the castle. The journey home to Winterfell had been nothing less than horrid for the Stark girls, traveling without any real notion of the condition of their dear brother. Supposedly, there's going to be a shipment of grain sent to White Harbor from the Dragon Queen. A peace offering, the scroll had said, though for all Sansa knew that could just be a diversion. Instead, a ship full of Dothraki screamers or armored Unsullied would come out and slaughter her people. It was hard to put that notion out of her mind. Even as they strolled through the gates of Winterfell, all the sorrowful eyes of her people didn't help either. Each day after that was more of the same. There wasn't much to do other than wait. Correspondence with the Dragon Queen had began. All there was to do was send a raven and wait for the response. The most recent letters that she sent mentioned the possibility of sending Maester Aemon. Sansa was nervous for the response. Further regarding Aemon, apparently the old man had already departed Castle Black. Supposedly, he relished the idea of meeting Daenerys, so much that he left even before the Dragon Queen had agreed to it. Aemon knew in his soul it would come to pass. Or so it seemed. The current Lord Commander Thorne allowed him to leave for reasons unknown to Sansa. Though her advisors mentioned Thorne's long-lost allegiance to the Targaryens may have had something to do with it, or perhaps the Night's Watch just needed a new maester anyway, and Aemon deserved to die with his real family. The vows binding him to Castle Black seemed to matter little given the man had truly served the majority of his life. A squadron of Night's Watch brothers were escorting him down south to Winterfell. They received word of their departure about a month ago. Sansa surmised they'd arrive sooner rather than later. Her thoughts were confirmed when one of her bannermen came to her about seeing a caravan on the horizon. The best guess would be that it's Aemon. Therefore the front gates swung wide and the Starks gathered in the courtyard to await the visitors. And eventually, after much waiting, the caravan rolled through. Seemed as if the Night's Watch got their hands on 2 carriages for Maester Aemon. Old ones at that, one of the back wheels squeaking loudly. Sansa wondered how it made it all this way. Looked to possibly fall apart at any second. A pair of brothers of the Night's Watch rode in front. They hopped down from their horses and went over to the carriages. Sansa looked to Rickon and Arya before stepping forward. Her feet carried her mind a bit blank, though her brain began working in overdrive when one of the doors for carriage opened up. 3 faces peered out, 2 completely foreign to her, though one was clearly Aemon. The other was a dark-haired girl wearing thick furs. But there was another, a face she hoped might smile at her. Instead, an empty expression greeted her. She was stunned. His name fluttered through her lips in a tone lower than a whisper. Bran. Apparently, the view wasn't closed off to her younger siblings. Rickon surged past Sansa in a blur, screaming his brother's name. Arya came to stand next to Sansa, head turned cockeyed. Is that really him? He looks so different. It's him. Sansa simply replied, He's changed. Haven't we all? 3 people spilled out of the second carriage, a portly gentleman, a girl, and young boy. They looked pleasant enough. The 2 girls moved forward as the 2 Night's Watchmen readied a sled of sorts, then getting Bran out to sit him on it. Sansa gathered this was his only real means of transportation. The air filled with Rickon's shrill voice and his tears. He pelted Bran with questions about where he's been and what's happened to him since they last saw each other. So glad to see his older brother, he hugged Bran around the neck, but it wasn't the same. The youngest boy's tone lowered when Bran finally began to respond. Sansa and Arya weren't even close enough to hear what he said. Whatever it was, it made Rickon quiet down, hanging his head a bit. By then, Aemon and girl had vacated the carriage. The other 3 people loomed near. The 2 Night's Watch brothers conversed with the 2 carriage drivers, likely about the journey back to Castle Black. Bran craned his neck to see Sansa and Arya get close. Sansa, Arya, hello? Unable to contain herself, Sansa finally had embraced Bran. It was strange. Bran barely reciprocated. only resting a lone hand on her back. His face was cold. Of course, being in the north, most people's skin ends up being cold to the touch, especially outside. But this was different. Sansa's cheek felt like it brushed against a block of ice. She pulled back so Arya could have a turn. All was silent in the courtyard. All onlookers had stopped what they were doing to watch. Hundreds of eyes rested on the arrival of the long-lost Stark. If they only knew who actually just came through their gates, it wasn't who they thought it was. Range Stark was really truly gone. Had been for some time. Something else paraded around in his skin. Rickon searched for his brother in that moment, only coming up with nothing. His eyes told him it was Bran. Yet the person he saw wasn't who he expected. Noticing her brother's discomfort, Sansa wrapped her arm around Rickon, who gladly accepted the warm embrace. Urdia leaned down to hug Bran as Sansa turned to her other visitors. The man, wrapped tightly in master's robes, was stooped and wrinkled. Eyes clouded over with blindness, yet a vibrant purple even so. Targaryen colors, there was no doubt as to who this was. "You must be Master Reimagined," she said to the old man, as brightly she could. Baratheon leaned on the portly gentleman for support. He reached out his hand to Sansa. She hesitantly took it. He smiled and replied, "Ah, yes, you must be Sansa Stark. I've heard much about you." "You have?" "Well, of course," young Jon spoke often about his family. "Oh, how he loved you all." Sansa couldn't help but avert her gaze to the snowy ground. Wasn't the first time she'd feel guilty over how she treated Jon, and it wouldn't be the last. "I'm glad to finally meet you. Sounds like something Jon would do," Iak said, coming over. "Who are you?" Her eyes glanced to the man and girl next to Aemon. "Hello," the man said. "My name is Samwell Tarly. I'm a friend of your brother's. We served together at Castle Black for many years." Then he motioned over the girl and boy he came with. "This is Gilly, my wife," Gilly answered for herself, smiling. She gripped the boy by his shoulders. "This is our son, little Sam." "And you?" Arya inclined her chin towards the dark-haired girl. "I'm Mira Reed," the girl said. "I traveled with Bran, Howland Reed's daughter." Mira's eyes widened. "You know of my father?" "He is journeying north," Bran said suddenly, cryptically, voice flat. "Escaped the battle at Duskendale, joining the main army as it marches to Moat Kylan." Confused, Sansa merely nodded. Well, this is quite the surprise. We didn't know that Bran was with you, or that Anorm would be accompanied by a small family." "You see, my lady," Sam began, "I cared for Maester Absalom for many years at Castle Black. I thought it would be more prudent if I traveled with. I apologize for not making that clear. If we are intruding—" "It's fine," Sansa waved it off. "I assumed Maester would need caring for. It's not a problem." "But how did you come upon Bran?" Arya asked, glancing back to her brother. "Just so happened he came through around the time we were preparing to depart," Sam said. "Yes," Bran added, voice just as emotionless as before. "It was time for my return." Neither Sansa nor Arya were able to truly respond to that, best to shift the conversation. "So," Sansa sighed a bit, interlocking her fingers across her stomach. "Master Robin, you fully understand why you are here." "I do," the old man replied, widening his eyes a bit, even though he's clearly blind. "You wish for me to travel to Dragonstone, to treat with the last of my family, Daenerys Targaryen. You wish for young Jon to be returned to you." "Correct," Sansa replied. "You are to be our emissary. You are willing to do so." "I am," Aemon answered quickly. "There's nothing I'd want more." Grabbing a stone off the ground, Bronn of the Blackwater drew back and chucked it in the direction of the cacophonous noises. "Would you horse lord savages shut the fuck up?" As if by actions not entirely coincidental, the chanting and drumming abruptly ceased, a still silence hanging ominously over the late afternoon, scattered scrubland of the southern crown lands, only for it to pick up again, seemingly louder. "Fuck you." "Too bad, I thought you had them for a moment," came the silky, not at all sarcastic voice of his commander. "Shut it, sister fucker," Bronn spat, walking back to his horse, mounting it quickly before covering his ears with his hands in another as yet futile attempt to keep his mind from scrambling. "I can normally handle anything, but the Dragon Queen's cunts have been at it for fucking hours." A whistle left the tight lips of Sir Fulman Brax of Hornvale. "I wouldn't mind tasting that Dragon Queen cunt," he smirked lewdly, licking his lips. Anyone who fucks up that Stark bastard who slighted my wife's family's honor deserves what I do best. Why do you care? Lyle Cracol grumbled. You've sired enough bastards to give Fat Robert a run for his money. Before Ser Fleming could swing a fist at the Lord of Cracol, a fight he would lose, the commander of the Lannister army interjected. Both of you shut it. Vibrant green eyes narrowed at the cloud of dust in the distance, representing the enemy trotting their horses back and forth. Why haven't they attacked, he wondered out loud. Calling in reinforcements from Duskendale. We should attack now, urged Adamabrand. For Jaime Lannister, probably Lord of Casterly Rock. Though he wasn't sure of the succession issues with Uncle Kevin's death and Tyrion's treason, not that he really gave a fuck, the urge to recklessly barrel into the enemy was one that was ripped away from him along with his hand. With the coastal houses of Villeran, Celtigar, Staunton, Rucker, Sunglass, and Brune defecting almost immediately to the Dragon Queen, the remaining lords sworn to Cersei were vital to hold. And to hold them meant not annihilating his best troops as Jon Snow had done just north of here. Yes, he ended up replying. They are undoubtedly calling up reinforcements, but why this? Lyle snorted. They're trying to get in our heads. Demoralize us. Such it was for the force that had marched out of King's Landing the moment the Dothraki patrols began to raid around Rosy and Stokeworth, driving them back with powerful heavy cavalry charges. At the current position at Old Stone Bridge, a host of unsullied spearmen and racker men-at-arms forced them to halt, leading to the current standoff. Boogeyman for so long, the Dothraki took advantage of the natural fear Westerosi hearts held for them. First they beat a great number of hollow drums, adding to it their bestial war cries that brought terror to countless usse cities and slave armies. The troops of the Westerlands were just as unsettled by the loud and cacophonous noise as Bronn. Our men won't stand for this much longer. Make your decision now, my lord. If we withdraw, we'll have relieved Rosemead Stokeworth, and achieved our objectives, and lose our chance to crush a portion of their army before it is reinforced. Leo Lefford and Marbrand both had excellent points. But the bellow of Dothraki horns took the decision out of Jaime's hands. That's the signal for an attack. To your commands, men, clicking his tongue and jabbing his heels into the horse's side. Jaime trotted off as the signalers brought their bugles to their lips. Old Stone Bridge was actually a series of structures along a tributary river flowing into Blackwater Bay. A large timbered building served as the inn, with several stables both for the weary travelers and as way stations for dispatch riders, all along a fork in the road next to an old stone bridge, hence the name. The river was shallow enough to be forded by horse, but otherwise all traffic was bottled up into the bridge, making it key infrastructure for any army operating in the region. The Lannisters knew that, and so did the defected Crownlands lords that threw their lot in with Daenerys. As of now, a 500-strong cohort of Unsullied controlled it, with 7,000 Dothraki pouring across the river to assault the Westermen under the command of the Queen's Bloodrider Kavaro. Lord Lefford and Lord Marbrand established their infantry in the classic Westerland shield line, double-stacked with the 5-foot-high metal-lined shields, spears tipped with castle-forged steel bristling out like porcupine shields. Though originally planning to shatter the Westermen with the same charge as against the Northern Army, Kavaro didn't have the numbers to break through the shield wall, thus he sent his horse archers forward, the Dothraki loosing arrow after arrow from horseback, and withdrawing each time. Jaime retaliated with his own archers and skirmishers. Shields and armor did their part, but the Dothraki arrows sliced through whatever the protection didn't expose, slowly wearing the Lannisters down. 3 times Jaime called a general advance to engage a melee action, and 3 times the Dothraki drew back. Horse archers able to retreat safely and loosing arrows while twisting and facing the rear. A skill only the most skilled horsemen on the earth could perform. The afternoon was cool but dry, throats growing parched as the Westermen began to sweat under their heavy armor and thick gambesons and trousers. All the while the knights chafed behind the infantry. They engaged whatever screamers launched themselves at the lines, but otherwise they could only stand by while their comrades were slowly slaughtered. Enraged, bloodied, and close to the breaking point, Lyle Cracol sent his men into a massive charge, one initially screened by the shield walls of the infantry, but eventually breaking out into a disorganized melee of hot-blooded knights and plate armor gleaming in the afternoon sun. Exactly what Kavaro expected. But he had underestimated the power of a Westerosi heavy cavalry charge. The men in iron slammed through line after line of the unarmored horse archers and screamers breaking for the Unsullied line. Per their legend, the Unsullied held firm, taking whatever hits came to them and gradually withdrawing across the bridge once the mass of Westerland's cavalry began to overwhelm them. Cavaro, seeing the tide starting to turn due to the unexpected charge, sliced off the lower third of his long braid and ordered a withdrawal across the river to Duskendale. It wasn't a defeat, for his orders were simply to protect the Crownland's beachhead, but a badge of shame nonetheless. As it stood, in spite of the bloody fighting and enraged slaughter on both sides, each army was able to disengage in good order. Knights tired, infantry unable to ford the river. Bouncing in his saddle, Jaime arrived to see a detachment of men-at-arms executing the Dothraki stragglers, poking at the prone form of bare-chested and leather-clad bodies for a groan or squirm, then stabbing them through the middle with their blades. "You men, get back into formation," he yelled, quirling Widow's Wail in his left wrist for effect. The man in charge trotted forward. His face was covered in dirt and dried blood, but Lord Light's bushy mustache was easily visible. "The cunts are withdrawing, Sir Hiang. They'll be back, I think, so we're denying them their manpower." Sheathing his blade, Jaime removed his helm while letting the cool winter's air calm his racing heart. "Well, think the road to Duskendale is open?" He leaned forward on his saddle, feeling every year of his decades of life in his aching bones. "You kidding? They'll have 5,000 eunuchs and a dragon waiting for us. An ambush was set up to bait us. We just managed to get lucky assaulting into the bait. Best get out while the going is good." Shifting his gaze to the bodies around him, there were just as many in Westerland's gold and red as there were olive drabs and black leather of the Dragon Queen's foreign levies. Of the three combatants, Stannis had just gained the reach, while Daenerys had taken 2 gut punches and still could marshal overwhelming force. Cersei had the least room for error. "Aight?" Jaime turned to his herald. "Sound the withdrawal. We're headed back to Roseby." The order was soon blared out, multiplied by the various signalers until the entire army heard it. "We retreating?" was the first words out of Bronn's mouth as the command teams met underneath the shade of the old stone bridge inn. Low sunlight glinted off the diamond-shaped window panes, glass rare outside of the cities, one of the curiosities of the world. "Aye, we're withdrawing. This is a victory." Bronn snorted. "With victories like this, I hate to see what defeats look like. What else would you call protecting Rosby and Stokeworth from those barbarians?" Jaime shot back. He was sick of the former sellsword's negative attitude. Wineskin in hand, Bronn allowed himself a gulp of the sour liquid. "To generals like you and fighters like me, men that can gauge men and material, the calculus is different from someone like your sister or lover." Even as Jaime's sword hand clenched, Bronn knew he had a pass. Someone needed to tell the Lion of Lannister the brutal truth sometimes, and he had saved his ass enough times to have earned the right to speak freely. "You really think she'll see this as a victory? Think about it." With that, Bronn spurred his horse off. "Get over there, you fucks!" barked the man of House Westerling, sword in hand, as he directed a group of impressed small folk from Flea Bottom or the wharves, working as army non-combatants in exchange for increased rations for them and their families. Cersei was already using them to swell the city watch to record levels of manpower. "Careful with that. One spark and they'll be shoveling what's left of us into the fucking wind." Barrels of wildfire made it underneath the stone bridge, pyromancers ready to set it off as soon as the last infantry formation was across. Deny the bitch even the smallest stalk of wheat. Such were Cersei's orders. Burn it all. Burn them all. Jaxley shook his head violently. That night had been over 2 decades before, but it still haunted his every moment, awake and asleep. The cackling laughter, the screams, how his violet eyes flashed with a crazed light, almost a bright green like the wildfire he so loved. At times, Jaime could see the same glint in Cersei's eyes, when they were dining, going over strategy, making love. Sometimes the madness overcame her before it withdrew. Cersei brushing it off with a laugh and the same sultry smirk that had captivated him for decades. "Fuck everyone who isn't us. We're the only ones who matter, the only ones in this world." Sometimes he didn't even remember why he said that. How that combined with the same man that had killed the Mad King in order to save all of King's Landing and its inhabitants from a fiery death. That had betrayed his sacred oath as a Kingsguard. Iris was nothing to him compared to what he had with Cersei. a bond that went beyond mere oaths, beyond love and beyond blood. And here, watching the wildfire put into position, thousands of men, women, and children burned alive. Would you have done it? Would you have kept your oath then? What would Brienne say at this point? What would his past self have said, once sitting in the blood of his king? Now sitting, as the woman he so loved unleashed the wildfire stockpiled by the Mad King. Sir Aime, it was the Westerling bannerman. We're clearing out, come on. Reaching for his wineskin, finding him empty, Yanni just tossed it into the dust as he spurred his horse westward. He made his bed, Cersei the last family he had. The path of Sir Jaime Lannister had been set a long time before. You don't have to be here, your grace, Sir Barristan Selmy offered, noticing the dark circles under the Queen's eyes, with all the various chaos cropping up, stalemate in the Crown lands, the death of the Queen of Thorns. She was barely sleeping, spending all of her time at the painted table. The hand of the Queen was worried seeing Jon Stark again would only worsen her stress. This can be handled outside of your presence. Her violet eyes found him narrowed in skepticism. Last time I did that, my former lover nearly killed Lord Stark. The interrogation room was one used by the lords of Dragonstone and Targaryen kings of the past. An elevated room looked down on the dark chamber. Tiny peepholes giving the rulers an unobstructed view of whatever occurred. Perfect for the Queen. I trust Missandei and Tyrion to an extent, but I'm not taking any chances this time. Barristan couldn't help but grin softly. Exactly like her mother, a hidden steal. If only Rhaella had a dragon to ride. The translator and imp were already seated across from the empty chair, both waiting patiently as the door opened. Two stone-faced Unsullied guards, sworn only to obey commands from Daenerys or Missandei, brought the prisoner in. Unlike before, he had no hood, but both his hands and feet were shackled. Daenerys' breath hitched at the bruises still covering his face, faded and slightly healed, but still glaring. He looked angry, very angry. A cold rage at practically everything. Was this what all of Westeros truly thought of her? Coming here, hoping to break the wheel. Only for someone considered the most honorable in the Seven Kingdoms to despise her so thoroughly. He's still your enemy, sworn to the family that murdered yours, that wrapped her like a blanket, yet one growing more threadbare by the day. As for the old knight, all thoughts went out the window. The moment he saw Jon Stark, he's more northern than any of Lord Stark's children. More than Lord Stark himself from what he remembered, but there was something he couldn't shake. Something familiar that didn't match what he remembered of Ned Stark. The brooding, the anger. Barristan had seen it before, but not in a person that could be remotely connected to the North. His musings were broken as Tyrion broke the silence. Lord Stark, I hope things have been going well for you. Just peachy, Jon shot back, crossing his arms. The meals have improved in quality, so I should thank someone for that. You're getting the same as what we're getting, Lord Stark, Missandei remarked, smiling, hoping to get him to open up. As the Warden of the North, you should be treated commiserate of your standing. Chuckling, he glanced around. Then you're gonna let me go back to Winterfell. Tyrion shook his head. You know that can't happen, Jon. Then I'm not saying anything about Stannis or his plans. He is my king, and I am loyal to my oaths. Especially when it regards the Mock Dragon Queen. Daenerys shouldn't have been surprised of his initial instinct to think of her as her father. That didn't mean that it didn't strike a nerve. You're barking at the wrong tree. So you know how he burned Lady Olenna Tyrell alive. Someone as honorable as Jon Stark, they wouldn't take such actions kindly. Sacrificed her to the Lord of Light. Melisandre's idea, if the reports are to be believed. Varys paid the trust in him in full. Closing his eyes, Jon remembered Mance's screams as the fires licked at his feet. How he gazed with Jon in relief when the arrow pierced his heart. He had defied Stannis then, yet joined him knowing the penchant for burning. I can't pass judgment for what my king might have done in front of his enemies. Unlike Cersei Lannister, I have honor. Missandei held up her hands. All right, Lord Stark. We won't ask about any actual secrets. Her Grace. She knows what her father did to your family. Part of breaking the wheel means that such atrocities will never again be sanctioned by the crown. The translator leaned forward, hands pressed together, told by Daenerys of what she was allowed to tell him. Stories she was told about the Starks painted them as vile traitors. But if you are to be the Warden of the North under her Grace, when she wins, she would like to know you as she did her other vassals. A vassal? Jon shifted in his chair, jangling his chains. Does this look like how one would treat a vassal? He held up a palm, sighing. I know, just a precaution. If that stone-faced Unsullied that Tormund had a hard-on for was captured, I'd chain him too, so what would you like to know? My life story. How the poor bastard son of Ned Stark had to be plopped at the wall 'cause no one could bother to love a motherless boy. He's bitter. Not that I blame him, Barristan observed. Placing her hand on the cold stone, memories of her own childhood coming to the forefront. An unwanted bastard, a princess in exile. We're not much different, he and I. Just start with why you sided with Stannis. Abandoning your Night's Watch vows. I thought those were for life. Jon crossed his arms. Winterfell was occupied by the scum that murdered my brother. My sister was being raped and tortured by a sick bastard. Literally a sick bastard. I was the last Stark that could do something about it. Stannis just provided the means. I know you, Jon Stark, Tyrion responded. You're too much like your father. It would take more than personal reasons to betray your oath. Lord Commander Hoare let his line die rather than renounce his vows. What additional reason made you do what Black Heron's brother did not? Pursing his lips, Jon nodded. Ajay, even if my entire family had died, even if my family wasn't threatened at all, I would still support Stannis. Jon confessed, looking around the room, as if knowing that Daenerys was watching him. He has earned my fealty, for he is the only one who knows of the threat we all face. There it was, the same words he had said to her during their one-on-one talk. Daenerys leaned in, head almost touching the walls as she listened intently. Missandei was equally as intrigued and curious. What is this threat, Lord Stark? Deciding to go for broke, Jon was sick of pretending that the damned chair of swords was actually the fight that mattered, the White Walkers. The long night, both the translator and the queen blinked simultaneously. The what? It was Tyrion that made the first groan. Oh gods, Jon, not this again. He shook his head. I vouch for your honor, for your intelligence, and then you spout off these mad legends. Grumpkins and Snarks are not threatening us. They are, dwarf, Jon shot back, banging his fist on the table and causing Dainty to flinch, not expecting the noise. They gather north of the wall, their army of corpses, steadily marching south. When they come south, we are all one step away from becoming nothing but meat in his army. Stilling Tyrion's next biting comment, Missandei met Jon's eyes. Please, Lord Stark, tell me what these White Walkers are. And so he did. Sitting there, face a brooding mask and eyes sunken, staring the 1,000 yards of a grizzled veteran exposed to horror no other could have ever seen, he told them everything. From the moment he had first faced one in the Lord Commander's chambers to the Battle of Hardhome, of how Stannis saw the threat and committed himself to bringing the dawn. At the end, Barristan stepped back, sighing the heavy breath of a man too long upon this world. Well, of all the things I did expect, that wasn't one of them. Daenerys crossed her arms. He seriously expects us to believe this? I'm not sure, Your Grace, Barristan stated. Old eyes peering at the young lord as Missandei and Tyrion continued to question him. Ned Stark was always an honorable man that hated lie, and Jon Stark is clearly his father's son. Then he's delusional, then. Add then, ice monsters. Corpses rising from beyond the grave. The queen had birthed dragons in the flames from eggs long since ossified, but there were places she couldn't suspend disbelief for. Could she? As the Lord of Winterfell continued to speak, expression clouding with frustration and determination, Daenerys found a dull sparkle in his gray eyes. An expression she had seen in many a slave, blinking as they couldn't comprehend the fact that they were now free. One of a deep resignation of giving up on ever being able to escape the horrors they had lived. But those freedmen had long since been beaten down. Jon Stark, the gaze was wild, untamed as the vast wilderness of the north. Zealous in his effort to convince her and her advisors of the threat he claimed was lurking north of the wall. They are generally weak from rot and decay, but normal steel or wood can't kill them lest you smash them up. And tell me, what does kill these grumpkins and snarks? Tyrion asked, tone tinged with sarcasm, chuckling along with the Dothraki guards that knew the common tongue. Jon was not amused. They can only be killed with fire. Dragonglass works best, while even a touch of Valyrian steel anywhere on their bodies would take them down. Ser Barristan eyed Dany quizzically. Dragonglass, I remember your brother speaking to me about massive caves of dragon glass that lie in caves underneath Dragonstone. Perhaps that could be a bartering item with the North if they actually believe this story. Dany mused in response. Winter is coming. She turned back to Barristan with a raised eyebrow. The words of House Stark. I always thought it referred to winter itself, but he pursed his lips. House Stark's founder was the one that built the wall. Bran the Builder. The history lesson wasn't misunderstood by Daenerys, eyes shifting back to the form of Jon Stark. The latest in that long and august line of northern kings and lords, preaching the legends of his family as if he had seen them personally. His passion, his fire, so unlike the image of the frigid northern sociopath that Viserys had long told her of. That Ser Jorah had partially confirmed with his stoic ways even in the thick of the fight. Lord Stark's fury was shocking and thrilling, sending a shiver through Daenerys, not one of fear. We do have fire-breathing dragons, Tyrion replied. If you bend the knee, then they could burn these whites, as you call them. Missandei leaned forward, clasping her hands together earnestly. Same as with the White Walkers? No, the White Walkers can only be killed by dragonglass or Valyrian steel. The imp raised a brow. And why is that, Lord Stark? I didn't make the damn things, Jon hissed, fire rising to new heights. Hands reaching out. Missandei eased Jon down. All right, Lord Stark. All right, calm down. Now what is the status of the defenses of the Night's Watch? Look, yelled Jon, seated and not attempting to move, but yelling all the same. I've been patient with you. I've answered your questions and told you the truth. Now get the damn Dragon Queen here or else I'm done speaking. Beside her, Covaro chuckled. A horse must have kicked him in the head when a babe, Khaleesi, addled his mind. Dainty said nothing, only watching him closer. You understand, Lord Stark, but... He laughed darkly, humor not reaching his eyes. Understand? None of you can bother to understand the chaos and death that would happen if the dead breached the wall. A snort from Tyrion. I've seen the wall, pissed from the top of it. In fact, that thing has stood for thousands of years. If the Grumpkins and Snarks even exist, then that monstrosity would easily keep them out. Shut up! The roar from Jon's lips even made Daenerys jump from her spy hole. It was not the snarl of the wolf, it sounded almost like a dragon. None of you get it, do you? None of you fucking fools truly understand what we're facing. Calm down, Jon. You're not listening. His chains rattled, tightening against their holds, unsullied, tensing behind him. They have no logistics, no conscience. They don't feel remorse or love or fear, only bloodlust. His eyes blazed. Only an urge to obey the Night King's desire to kill every single living fucking thing. He erupted out of his chair and table nearly flipping over. Both Missandei and Tyrion flinched. Duvagati, the Unsullied, grabbed him by the shoulders, shoving Jon back in the chair, all mindful not to hurt him, though his squirming and screaming didn't help. You don't know what the fuck you're dealing with. Fighting over the Iron Throne, she'll be ruling over a graveyard if we don't stop the fucking dead. Suddenly, Missandei smacked her palm on the table. More noisy than anything, yet in the dark look on the translator's face caused his ire to fall. Quiet brooding returning, although the anger remained. Are you done, Lord Stark? Missandei said coldly. Tyrion looked surprised at her sudden steel, as was Dany. Good for you, Missandei. Don't do that again. Jon's eyes met hers. The fire wasn't a blazing inferno, but the embers still sizzled and glowed. Forgive me, my lady, and forgive her grace, if she is watching. His gaze still dark, hollow, a man that had seen horrors that none of those looking him over could even comprehend. Even after all they had endured, Daenerys felt a cold suddenly overtake her as that gaze finally found the hollow in which she watched him from. But his lids fluttered closed, hard, as if trying to suppress a painful memory. When you've seen an entire free folk encampment fall to tens of thousands dead, only for those tens of thousands to rise as if they were only sleeping to stare at you with eyes the color of blue ice. You'd find the most powerful person in Westeros caring more about a single man's rage than the greatest threat to all of humanity. Then I can't help you. We don't think anything about you, Lord Stark. At least I don't. Missandei looked over to Tyrion, silently chastising him over the Grumpkin and Snark's comment. A potential alliance requires trust to go both ways. He shook his head. I'm not talking. I've already said too much. And if none of you believe me, then there is no fucking point now, is there? Silence. Take me to my cell. Instructing the Unsullied to comply with Jon's request, Miss Aemdia and Tyrion filed out of the room to find Aemdia and Barristan. The hand of the king folded his arms while the queen simply hung her head on the wall, eyes closed, mind a jumble of conflicting thoughts. So what do you two think? Barristan asked. I saw the whole thing, but you saw him up close. Part of Ser Barristan thought he knew more about Jon Stark than any of them, but he dismissed it. Simply impossible. Tyrion sighed. Well, if I didn't know him from before, I'd say he was as mad as the Mad King, or my sister, or Stannis. It was almost ironic and completely tragic. All our rulers for decades have either been madmen or drunks, but not Daenerys. Not on his watch. But Jon Stark, even as a bastard, always had a level head. More like Eddard Stark than Eddard Stark's true-born children. I'm inclined to think this story is absolute nonsense, but I don't... That didn't help, Lady Missandei. This is not something I ever thought I'd have to deal with. Dealing with the Masters was a preparation for dealing with recalcitrant Westerosi noblemen. Not ice monsters. His story is fantastical, but he is sincere. I don't think he was lying about any of it. So what you're saying is that you believe that he believes that there is an army of dead men being led by frozen demons north of the wall. The queen suddenly said, not turning her head to face them. And that this is also what Stannis believes. It makes sense as to why Stannis has fallen into the Red Witch's influence, burning Lady Olenna and all the others. The pieces were suddenly fitting in for Tyrion. The followers of Longclaw believe that there is a promised... Daenerys turned, cutting him off. Yes, I know. Priestess Kinvara said that I am that promised prince, or princess, whatever. And the Red Woman says that it is Stannis. Brienne of Tarth told me as much when we talked of Renslaye's demise while she was in King's Landing. It makes him extra dangerous, Your Grace. He's not Robert fighting for the throne. He's a religious fanatic fighting for Godhead. A point she had not considered, but now would have to adapt all her plans. Lord Stark asked me to set up a parley with Stannis. That will be a useless endeavor. Still, it would be in your best interests to at least attempt it. Barristan steered the conversation back to Jon in the north. With Stannis, it will hurt our efforts to try and make peace with him, but I think we can make more likely peace with the north with this new information. Inform them of the dragonglass deposits in the island caves. If they supply the miners, it shouldn't be hard to let them ship it to White Harbor. Costs us nothing. When the Raven comes, I'll include the offer, if Your Grace agrees. Looking back at the interrogation chamber for the briefest moment, Daenerys nodded. Send the offer, but don't make it official just yet. I wish to speak to whomever they send before I grant the North any more favors. She walked to the door. Your Grace, Miss Aemdia called after her, but she was already gone. Gods, what a mess. Still seems a bit far-fetched, doesn't it? Tyrion mused. We serve a woman who walked into a fire and emerged with 3 dragons. Barristan the Bold didn't hold back, still thinking about Jon, how he looked, how he brooded, his very attitude and personality. So damn familiar. If that is possible, who knows what else is? The dwarf didn't have a response for that, ignoring any effort from her council to speak to her, to discuss the various revelations or insanities handed them by their captive. Daenerys pushed her way out of the castle, scrambling the myriad of black stone steps towards the grassy plain that provided the dash of color to the otherwise drab and imposing volcanic island. Galloping past on a patrol, several Dothraki screamers noticed their silver-haired Khaleesi alone and fell into a respectful yet close step behind her. Rocks at the ready just in case of a threat. In the back of her mind, Daenerys appreciated their loyalty and diligence, but at the moment she simply wanted to be alone. Well, partly alone. Drogon and Rhaegar were perched on the cliffside that they had made their lair almost the day the Targaryen forces secured Dragonstone from the few guards Stannis Baratheon had left. Elongated necks stretched out on the grass, gentle breathing going in and out while they slept. Various carcasses of sea creatures were strewn about, the largest of ones they preferred feeding on left on the sandy beaches below them. For once, Daenerys observed with not a little amusement, they actually were keen on cleaning up after themselves. Was it only yesterday that they were but hatchlings, all able to climb atop her while nuzzling her skin? Now, Drogon was as wide as the central keep of Dragonstone Castle itself, his brothers not far behind. Oh my darlings! Sensing their mother's presence, Drogon yawned wide while Raziel merely snorted, curling his head around to get more sleep. Raziel, my sweet, Dany remarked, calling out to him as one would a puppy. Don't you want to greet Muna? Normally the dragons would try to crowd each other out to receive affection from the diminutive Targaryen queen. But the emerald dragon merely raised his head in the direction of the keep, amber eyes blinking, head cocking, as if he was looking, searching for something, only for him to hoot once and return to his curled-up slumber. Dany reached her hand out to touch Drogon's offered snout, stroking the scales as she thought about Rhaegar. How this behavior was quite common of him since she returned from the mainland. In any case, he was eating plenty and flying, so she wouldn't worry. Where's your other brother? The question answered itself when Viserion passed overhead. The Kreen dragon roaring as it shot across the length of the island before banking out to sea. Daenerys laughed merrily. Shall we join him? Drogon's eyes twinkled. Dragon bobbing his head before lowering his wings, begging for her to mount him. Soaring through the sky, winds whipping through her hair. Daenerys felt exactly at home for the only time in her life upon the earth. Hands gripping onto the heated spines and scales of her majestic mount, she gazed at the green speck of Dragonstone, of the glistening blue waters of Blackwater Bay, and the distant white cliffs and sandy beaches of her homeland and birthright. Up here she knew who she was, knew where she belonged without a worry in the world. Dropping her queenly mask and whooping into the void, a carefree life soaring among the clouds, yet also a lonely one, the last Targaryen. Such a chink in her armor brought forth all of her problems. A mental command leveling out Drogon so she could hug his scales. Let the serenity of the midpoint between man and gods clear her mind. She'll be ruling over a graveyard if we don't stop the fucking dead. Words of a madman, words of a mummer at best. So fantastical and insane that no one in their right mind would conjure such a thing. Men rising from the dead, controlled by ice monsters. Daenerys had no time for such nonsense. Much of her hope that the North would just bend the knee so that she could wash her hands of Jon Stark, never even have to think of him again. But this was no madman. Jon Stark had avenged his family, destroyed 2 great houses at the helm of Stannis Baratheon's army, nearly crushed her horde and her dragon, and withstood all the pain and humiliation heaped on him since he arrived at Dragonstone, and he was still here, stubborn and unyielding. A strong man, a man of conviction and inner certainty. Why would he make up such a fantastical story? To fool her? To seek a better negotiating position? Because it's true? The shudder coursing through Dany had nothing to do with the freezing cold winds blowing across Drogon's back. He can't be right, he just can't be. But what if he is? If true, then she was faced with a person so alien to her. A man that fought not for power or gold or the pleasures of the flesh, but for family, honor, survival, for more than just himself. Closing her eyes, the panic and sheer terror in Jon Stark's voice still ringing in her ears, Dany saw much of herself. The same selflessness and drive, one that drove her to continue with the stubborn Northern in spite of the most glaring futility that one could imagine. He is the ally you need, but the enemy you have. Even soaring high above the clouds atop Drogon's back, not a care in the world that could have bothered a dragon. Daenerys Targaryen couldn't escape that somehow, some way. Her fate had come inexorably linked with the enigmatic Lord of Winterfell. Feed us, your grace. The smell of smoke had cleared from King's Landing. Thank the Seven. Such was the only improvement that Jaime could note as arriving during the reign of Cersei of House Lannister. From atop his war stallion, only the 2 banner-bearers of the Lion's Standard ahead of him as he led the 500-strong Westermen towards the Red Keep. The capital has only grown colder, shabbier, and dirtier since the last time. Robert has cared little for ruling, and Joffrey's wars neglected the population to point of starving, but this was something else entirely. Sullen lines of people gathered outside of impromptu markets, being doled out meager sacks of grain, oats, mead, or oil by the city watch. Weapons bristling from the gold cloaks to ward off funny business. Rationing has its victims in the form of wastrels strewn in the streets, and scrawny street urchins scavenging through piles of trash. The gold cloaks didn't even bother to kick them in the ass anymore, though such was a small comfort to Raimi. He doubted it was altruism. Gods, he breathed, at seeing a group of boys chasing after rats that were once feeding on an emancipated corpse. This city is dying. Riding beside him, Cerebron of the Blackwater snorted. The rest of the High Command was back at Stokeworth in the current stalemate with Daenerys Targaryen, but the hero of Blackwater Bay was here in earnest, wanting to make sure that he got assurances of his castle when the war ended. At least that's what he told Jaime. Wasn't like it was exactly thriving before, but 7 fucking hells. Apparently even he had reservations and qualms. Only thing in abundance are gold cloaks and your sister's propaganda. Jaime had to admit that true. Apparently cheap paint and cloth were the only plentiful items in King's Landing. Every block or so found massive banners of the Golden Lion of House Lannister atop a field of fire and black lines representing charred corpses. Whether referencing to Stannis or Daenerys the Lion of Lannister, didn't know, perhaps both. She stands between you and this, the caption read in large block script. Kybord's smart. It's effective. Rumors of heathen gods and fires had kept the populace in line during the War of the Five Kings. Bronn clicked his tongue. That one's my favorite. He pointed to a giant banner stretched horizontally across 2 ruined but still standing spires of the Great Sept. Painted atop the white canvas was a rather flattering likeness of Cersei, smiling and happy. Surrounding her outstretched arms were a group of happy children of all ages. Queen Cersei loves children, the script read. Artists must have been imported. No one that good lives in Westeros. Good relations with the Iron Bank likely kept trade with Braavos a going concern. But that wasn't the only art in King's Landing. Apparently the tough shit still have fight in 'em, mused Bronn, pointing to the constant scribbling of graffiti on the walls of all the buildings. Fresh, based on how dark and vibrant it was. Jaime had to squint to parse the badly written scrawl. Pay your debt, Cersei Lannister, read one, though Lannister was spelled wrong. Where's our food? Was far more direct. The large image of the queen with the smiling children had its meaning changed with a crudely drawn engorged male appendage adorning Cersei's hips. That was the most direct of them all, as was a rudimentary pornographic pictograph of Jaime and Cersei copulating. Brother fucker queen, both words spelled wrong. It captures your likeness, Lannister, Bronn mused with a smirk. Jaime resisted the urge to throttle him. Some were war-related, bordering on treason. Stannis is our king. Whoever wrote it capitalized king for emphasis. Mother of dragons, breaker of chains. Seems Stannis wasn't the only one with supporters in the capital. A cluster of gold cloaks supervised a group of scrawny small folk washing over the last scrawl with chalked lime. Good thing she stays in the keep. The crowds would tear her apart if she stepped out. Aye, she'd look less pretty with a cow pie in her face than Joffrey. You better hope this procession ends soon before I kill him. Luckily for Bronn, they were only minutes away from arriving at the gates. The Red Keep was like a different world altogether. The grounds were clean. Gardens lush with plant life, trimmed and watered daily with overripe oranges, lemons, and grapes dangling from their stems. Fine silks and laces clothed the members of court, while the servants were shabby and sullen but far better fed and dressed than those living outside. Only the best for my sister was that way when we were children and is that way now. Dismounting his horse, Jaime saw the portly form of Sir Boros Blount. Just embarrassing for a proper knight to end up that way, especially when the city was starving around them, approaching him. Lord Jaime, her grace has been expecting you. I gather that, but why my men? They're better served fighting the Dragon Queen's armies. Much as I would like them driving that bitch into the sea, you'll have to ask her grace for such answers. You and Sir Bronn. Boros regarded the former sellsword with a haughty contempt. Are to come with me to the royal apartments. Mygar's holdfast had undergone yet another transformation. All remnants of houses Targaryen or Baratheon had been tossed out, leaving a veritable flurry of reds and golds adoring the walls. Furniture of Westerland style. It was as if Jaime had entered a satellite branch of Casterly Rock. As if I didn't manage to escape the first one, it held no memories of significance since his mother passed away. Hell's King's Landing barely did, but the days serving Prince Rhaegar and Queen Rhaella, along with the stolen moments with Tommen and Myrcella, were more than his father's pride and joy ever gave him. Approaching Cersei Solar, Jaime could hear her screams of anger through the walls and doors. Some starving peasant cunt defaced me in such a manner. Looks like she knows about the little surprise on her banner, Bronn whispered in Jaime's ear. Poor cunt has guts. Or a death wish, was Jaime's reply. Do not worry, your grace, Quabbin replied. I have my birds combing the entire city. I'll find the perpetrator. Do not worry. Burn him. Burn his entire family. Jaime winced, as if scalded, that tone quite familiar to him. The screeching grew even worse as Cerberus opened the door. Burn all of them who stand in the way of my reign. Its green eyes immediately softened upon seeing her brother, a flash of the sweet, loving girl he had fell in love with, emerging from the bitter shell. Jaime, no longer caring about hiding and propriety, she was the true queen of Westeros, after all. Cersei practically flew into his arms, kissing him deeply. I missed you, my lion. Even with all of his thoughts and reservations, Jaime couldn't help but melt into the kiss. And I you, my queen. After several seconds, he broke the kiss. I bring you news of the defeat of the Dothraki at Old Stone Bridge. Rosie and Stokeworth are still in our hands. Cersei seemed to puff up at the news. You see, my Lord Hand, the situation isn't as dire as you are making it seem. Cairbrand only nodded, while Cerberus took his leave. The hulking form of the mountain was plenty protection for her grace. The dragon bitch is licking her wounds. Euron Greyjoy has decapitated the Dornish leadership, including the cunts that killed our beloved Myrcella. Even with his conscience, Jaime couldn't feel anything but satisfaction at the death of Illyria Sand. And Stannis and the bitch have crippled each other while we merely watch. The manic glint returned to her green eyes. Picture it, Jaime. Olenna Tyrell burned alive, the stark bastard in chains. They are falling apart before our very eyes. Smiling for effect, Jaime reached out to place a hand on her shoulder. While that is welcome, we still have a war to fight. Happiness souring into a scowl, Cersei waved him off. Yes, I know. She walked to the window, gazing out at her domain. Starving and stinking of shit and death, but still hers. He burns Olenna alive, but the Reach has still bent the knee to Stannis. Clayburn stepped forward, repository of information from across the realm. It seems that Randyll Tarly switched sides prior to the Battle of Highgarden, and his championing of Stannis' claim as his Warden of the South won over many of the Reach Lords. Who do they hate most? House Lannister, House Baratheon, or a Dothraki, Giscari, Dornish horde? Lesser of evils, I believe. Cunts, Cersei hissed venomously. But I have a plan for Stannis. Sir Bronn, is it? Looking around, hoping to have melted into the walls and ignored, Bronn knew he had to say something. Yes, your grace. My brother promised you a castle for your trouble and a highborn wife. The former sellsword nodded. Take the best cutthroats and riders you can find and go to the Stormlands and Reach. Slash and burn, reave and rape. Make Stannis expend his men and energy trying to find you as my father had with the Brotherhood without banners. Do it well and you'll get your pick of Highgarden or Storm's End. Blinking, Bronn hid his surprise. He'd been expecting something decent such as Duskendale or the Twins, the premier seats of the Reach and Stormlands, both very wealthy kingdoms. He couldn't believe his luck. I will make you proud, your grace. With that, he turned and left. There was a 30-70 chance that it would actually pan out, but for Highgarden or Storm's End, he would take it. Once a minute passed. Cersei chuckled. Good. With him gone, we can talk the linchpin of my plan. Stannis won't ever attack us. Pursing his lips, Jaime crossed his arms. And how was that? He attacked King's Landing once, and will do it again. Because we're going to bog him in Dorne. Cersei began to laugh. With any luck, he'll disappear into the deserts like Harlan Tyrell. She giggled with glee at the thought. The Dornish houses are weak. Many led by children after Euron killed their fathers and mothers at Sunspear, Sheeburn informed them. Arya and Martell can't hold them together, so any assault into the Principality will cause them to collapse. Why would he attack Dorne? Walking towards Jaime, the line of Lannister fought from flinching. There was the look. Aeturus look. We're going to assassinate Lord Langston Hightower and frame the Martells. Kissing his lips hungrily, it seemed as if the thought alone drove her to pure arousal. They're going to want to burn Dorne to the ground once it happens. Yabbing didn't know what was worse. Cersei becoming heiress, or their father, or both. The arrival of Brandon Stark likely should have spawned an air of happiness throughout Winterfell. Seemingly instead, a fog of confusion and mystery filled the keep. Certainly, many of the guardsmen throughout the castle were somewhat new. Some had seen Bran Stark when he could walk, fewer after the fall. Jon and Sansa had learned that Bran may still be alive after Theon confessed to not burning him and Rickon during the Ironborn occupation. But the odds of a crippled boy ever appearing again seemed so unlikely. Even when he did appear, the momentary joy dissipated quickly because the boy who did return wasn't the Bran anyone remembered. The bright boy who loved to climb, Rickon, expected to see his big brother that he loved so much even though they couldn't run and play together anymore. He expected to be met with a smile and a hug. He got the latter without the warmth of the smile rendered the embrace joyless. When it should have been a magical moment filled with glee, the boy sitting before them wasn't the Brandon Stark, they remembered. Instead, a shell of his former self strolled through the gates. The original Bran seemed to be long gone. A different spirit rested inside him, adding to the ghosts already residing in the crypts. At night, while the keep was quiet, Arya and Sansa strolled through the winding corridors. Somewhat dark, only light being the torches on the wall, almost silent except for their footfalls against the stone. He didn't seem right, Bran, Sansa agreed he was cold. His skin was frigid to the touch. He didn't even feel alive. Something must have happened to him. Something terrible. Ferozia kept her eyes forward. He's not the Bran I remember. Just like us, the time he spent away from home changed him. Though it appears as if he had a more drastic change. We need to find out what happened. Why? What would that help? I don't think something like this can be fixed. We owe it to ourselves to try to help him, if we can. Ordia said, making it sound like it isn't any other option. Truly, she had no clue if Bran could be helped. After the two sisters walked for a while without talking, until Arya broke the silence. I'm going to King's Landing. Sansa stopped dead in her tracks. What? Arya stopped as well, but she didn't turn around. I'm going to kill Cersei before Stannis does. I have to. Why? She's on my list. Your list? List of people I'm going to kill. Sansa shook her head, catching up to her sister. What are you talking about? It's hard to explain, Arya sighed. It's just something I have to do. You have a list of people you're going to kill. Most of them are dead already. Arya kept walking without allowing Sansa to respond. The older sister followed close behind, many questions flooding through her brain. Though she wouldn't have a chance to ask now, the two sisters came to a crossroads within the keep. Sansa glanced to the way to the right. Torches along the walls. I'll go check on Rickon. That's a good idea, Arya agreed. We can talk more later. Yes, Sansa replied, grimacing a bit. We must. Arya went left without responding. The older sectors stared at the younger as she walked, watching until the darkness shrouded Arya, not allowing a further view. Never had Sansa felt further from her only sister, even when they were thousands of miles from each other. Eventually, Sansa strolled off. It didn't take long for her to get to Rickon's room. She stood before it for a while before knocking. When Rickon's voice allowed her entry, she pushed her way in slowly. Her eyes found the smallest Stark sitting on the side of his feather bed. The wooden floorboards creaked underfoot as she approached. Hi, Sansa, Rickon said. Taking a seat next to him, Sansa said, Are you okay? You looked pale earlier. I'm fine. Something's bothering you. I can tell. You can't hide it from me, Sansa said, smiling a bit. Perhaps some innate motherly instincts kicking in. Though she had difficulty imagining herself as a mother, given all that's happened to her. Seemingly unable to hold it in any longer, Rickon sputtered words out. It was Bran. He scared me. Scared you? How? What he said. What did he say to you? I just wanted to know where Hodor was. The young boy began. That's it. Sansa knew little of Hodor save his existence. He often made rounds of the courtyard when she was young, but her mother wouldn't let her anywhere near him. As a result, she looked down on the simpleton. Even when she returned to Winterfell, him not being there didn't even cross her mind. Probably better for Hodor overall. Being in Winterfell while Ramsay was alive probably wouldn't have gone well for him. Despite that, she decided it was best to act like she knew him well. What did Bran say? Bran said. He died, Rickon sniffled, holding on tighter to his sister. Hodor died. The worst part was the way he said it. It sounded like he didn't even care. That's what got you so upset? Yeah, I don't know what happened to Bran, but I want him to stop it. He did look different. and the way he talked bothered me. Nothing like the Bran I remember, Sansa added, thinking back how cold his cheek felt. Even then, she could feel it. What happened to him? Rickon huffed. I don't know, but I intend to find out. I trust you'll like the accommodations, Lord Stark. A shrug from the prisoner. A cell. A room. When you have to sleep in the gut of a dead mammoth to protect from the icy blizzards north of the wall, you learn not to care as long as you get to sleep, he grunted. Missandei didn't know how to answer that. It was gruff and rude, but she couldn't find fault with that assessment. I suppose so. Hearing the clinking of chains as they dragged along the stone floor, Missandei knew this was long delayed. Efforts to use the harsh cells of Dragonstone to break Jon Stark had been in vain. Anyone that truly knew him could tell, and as his unilateral caregiver, the Nathi translator made the decision to transfer him to a guest chambers as befitting his standing. But you'll be more comfortable here. I'll be more comfortable back home, in Winterfell. That won't happen, so I'd suggest you enjoy what you can, especially being out of the cell. Jon eyed the unsullied guards leading him. I assume they'll be at my door. There was no answer. Then it's still a cell. Soft sheets. Wash basin. Doesn't matter if I'm not free to go and come, if I please. Trying not to shoot an annoyed retort back at Lord Stark, Missandei gestured to one of the Unsullied to open the door to the designated room. It was Spartan in accommodations, but did include a bed with furs and sheets, a wash basin, a chest filled with plain but clean clothing, and even a looking glass. All yours. Her voice was more guarded than before. Pursing his lips, Jon entered as soon as the shackles were removed. Under the watchful eye of Lady Missandei and his guards the entire time, inspecting the accommodations, sitting upon the bed, it was firm, not the best quality even by northern standards. Better than my bed at the Night's Watch, that's for sure. You are a Lord Paramount. Even as a hostage, you deserve to be treated well. My bruises are still healing and my ribs are still rather sore from where the Queen's dog attacked me, Lady Missandei. That was an unfortunate lapse to which the Queen has already made amends. Better too late than never, I would think. He nodded. Better too late than never, yes. Scooting to the edge of the bed, he patted the far end, bidding Missandei to sit, which she did. I know what you are trying to do, my lady. The kindness, the comfort, you are trying to bait me to betray Stannis. Lord Stark. No, let me speak. His voice was firm, but not loud. He had no quarrel with the freed slave. Someone who he could tell was genuine and kind. Your queen, she refuses to see the true threat in the north. The actual threat that faces us all. You do have to admit that your story is fantastical, Lord Stark. Her Grace would be a fool to make it the central focus of her campaign without proof. Crossing his arms, Jon's instincts told him to clam up, to not say anything. Somehow this woman reminded him of many he had known. Cowed, broken souls that rose to the occasion simply by being here meant she had an importance beyond her birth. And there was honestly no reason she had given to make her out to be a monster as many of his foes. He would trust her with innocuous information. For now, she refuses to consider it, while others in her position have. Missandei narrowed her eyes. Don't think Stannis is altruistic. She had prepared herself, studying everything about the wars and political situation Westeros had been mired in for decades, not about to become some useless paperweight for her queen. He fights for the same chair. Jon shook his head. His Grace knows the true threat. And yet, he's down here instead of up there. He's seen it and is committed to defeating it, which requires unity. Part of him said that the Dragon Queen was similar, only part. You gave him a chance. Why don't you give her Grace the same chance? I can understand her attacking my men. I can understand her desire to win a battle. His hand trembled, forcing him to pinch the bridge of his nose to still it. I see them every night. My bannermen, my allies, my friends. I see them burn in my nightmares. It wasn't just them. He saw Robb get his throat cut, Sansa getting raped, Ygritte dying in his arms, over and over again. But those weren't because of the Dragon Queen. A grim chuckle passed Jon's lips. Better to die on your feet than on your knees. Wilding words to live by. Jon took a deep breath. She caused it. Her dragon, her orders. There was nothing Missandei could say to calm his words. Not much. Anyways, war always brings hardship. Death. but better that than a peace with the same death and torture. Did the Blackfish deserve to be burned? Seeing the unsullied tense, Jon drew back. He wasn't Ramsay or Carl Tanner. An unarmed woman would not receive his wrath. Long beaten and violated into submission, Missandei wasn't about to be submissive anymore. Did a Ludden Tyrell deserve to be burned? Did the king beyond the wall whom you gave mercy to? If I recall, your king burned him for the same reason. And without dragonfire, it's a slow, painful death. The Lord of Winterfell said nothing for the longest while, his eyes boring a hole into the stone floor. Queen Daenerys, every time I've seen her. Jon's lips were curled in a sneer. She's either been a monster or some manipulator. Why in seven hells is she different from Cersei, Tywin, Joffrey, or Rose Bolton? Other manipulators and monsters that only desired power. He opened his arms. I have yet to see it. Letting the silence take hold for what had to be a minute. Missandei slowly met Jon's eyes. What tales have you heard of her? Her campaigns in Essos, I mean. Blinking, Jon wasn't sure where his supposed caregiver was going with this. Nevertheless, she seemed to be the only person in the damn keep that gave a damn about his welfare. I'll indulge her story. What's there to tell? Secured an unsullied army, and then pillaged and burned her way to conquer Meereen by fomenting slave uprisings. Suddenly, Missandei began to chuckle. Oh, you know nothing, Jon Stark. His ire was piqued. You're the second person to say that to me. He clenched his hand, not willing to think of Yaxley, of showing weakness in front of Missandei. I figure, I don't know much, but Daenerys has turned out to be exactly what I imagined her to be. Master Aemon had talked about her considerably, but given what information he had heard from Stannis, Jon was not inclined to rethink his position on the daughter of the most vilified man in Westeros. I don't blame you for not knowing the truth of what happened. The Targaryens aren't beloved, and your rulers have every interest in continuing that hate. Anything to justify what Tywin Lannister and Robert Baratheon did, butchering Daenerys' family and hunting down every last Targaryen. I was there, Jon Stark. I saw the truth. Jon knitted his brows in confusion. Well, it's not like I have anything better to do at this point. Enlighten me. Setting her hands in her lap, Missandei thought of where to begin, of what to tell him of her queen to get through his stubborn skull. After a minute of soul-searching, she had settled on a particular story. Queen Daenerys arrived in Astapor, seeking to purchase the Unsullied, which she did by tricking the good master that had previously owned them and me. Jon gave away nothing, but the very concept of slavery didn't sit well with him. Clearing her throat, she went on, the wise masters of Yunkai offered gold and access to a fleet of ships for her to return to Westeros. She refused. There was a tiny flicker of surprise in Jon's eye, a subtle tell, but one Missandei recognized. She stayed, taking the city so that she could free all the slaves held within, hundreds of thousands of them. This was always where the tales and rumors Jon heard had diverged. Some said she had stormed the city, others had her besieging it for months until starvation forced the defenders to yield. Based on Stannis' speeches to his command, the official line of the Baratheon king was that the dragons burned their way into Yunkai. Aemon claimed that it was done practically without bloodshed, but after enduring dragonfire at the Battle of Duskendale, Jon was inclined to believe Stannis and Meereen. What have you heard about Meereen, Lord Stark? On this, Missandei was genuinely curious. Who knows what they fed him about the evil Dragon Queen? Not much, Jon admitted. There was a tale of how she crucified 50 men, a gesture of her conquest of the city. He snorted. Did they refuse to bend the knee as Brynden Tully did? A sigh. The freed slave wasn't surprised that people like Cersei Lannister or Stannis Baratheon would try to gin up sympathy for the masters in order to tear down Daenerys. Crucifixion. It's what they used to execute slaves, Lord Stark, a form of torture and death, and as a message to other slaves that there is a price for disobedience. As such, it is often in public. Jon did not respond. In Astapor, before she bought the Unsullied, there was a line of slaves that had been condemned. Daenerys, she gave them water. Did you see this happen? He ended up asking dismissively. Sir Barristan Selmy did. He was with her at Astapor. He and I both saw the slaves along the road. Sir Barristan, one of the greatest knights of the King's Guard. Someone he had idolized from a young age, alongside Aemon, the Dragon Knight, or Daeron the Young Dragon. Jon refused to comment. But what she faced from the great masters of Meereen was far different, far worse. Missandei closed her eyes, the images still haunting her. 163 children. My brother's son, his son, and the children, even the children. From the pain in Missandei's voice, Jon remembered Maester Aemon's long ago words, grieving his family, Daenerys Targaryen's family. She suffered a loss too, now that he thought about it, head aching. Taking Jon's silence as an invitation to continue, Missandei did just that. One dead, crucified child for every single mile between the beginning of the mountain coast road and the gates of Meereen. Each of them left to die from thirst and exposure. None allowed the one form of mercy in broken legs or arms. A small mercy, but gargantuan in the face of days of abject suffering. Trying best to hold herself together, the weight of all the degradation and pain of her bondage beginning to overwhelm her, Missandei breathed deeply. Barristan wanted to have them removed, but she wouldn't let him. She had to look them all in the eye. Every person that was placed up there. Why? She wanted to remember them. Jon said nothing. What could he say? She had each of them buried with all honors, and the crucified masters were in response to that. Even now, I can see her hidden tears at those children lost, because a group of sadistic monsters wanted to prove a point. There was the longest silence, neither speaking. I don't believe you, Jon finally said. Yes, you do. It was as if the former slave could see right through him. In your heart, you know it's true, that those you most trusted have lied to you about the nature of your enemy. Letting the truth settle for several moments, Missandei stood. You think yourself the only one who knows loss, Jon Stark. To know that you are a survivor of a family hunted, to bear the weight of countless innocents. You saved the free folk from this threat behind the wall. But Daenerys freed millions of human beings from the chains of bondage. What do you want from me? Eyelids tightly closed, Jon was barely holding it together. I've told you the threat, the reason that I fight. I've told you that I cannot betray my oath. What do you want from me? He didn't mention Daenerys, didn't mention how she was a mad queen that attacked his men. I don't want anything from you, Jon Stark. No threats, no demands. None of those would work. Just for you to come face to face with a simple fact. Eyes fluttering open, Jon looked directly at Missandei. She had made her way to the door, standing in the entrance. What fact? For someone seemingly so meek, her dark eyes were hardened with an inner steel. Ask yourself this question. Would a monster feel grief for the innocent? Missandei turned to leave. In that, you'll find the truth you seek. The door closed before she received an answer. Do not blame children for the crimes of their parents. Such was why Jon forgave Alicent Karstark for her father and brother betraying House Stark, or Walda and Rosalind Frey for what their father did. And yet you didn't for Queen Daenerys. That's different. His mind was at war with itself. She is evil. Do you really think that, or does your anger truly come from blaming her for what her father and brother did? Jon knew not how to answer that question. Knew not where to separate Daenerys' actions from the Mad King's. Would a mad queen look at the faces of murdered innocent children? For once, he had an answer. No. The plenty of the Reach was wasted on Stannis. Sumptuous feasts, free-flowing wine, and the fairest of maidens might have enticed his older brother, while only an inverting of the sex of the latter would serve the same for his younger brother. But the same celibacy, sour wine, and Spartan dinner of bread, cheese, apples, and simple beef stew would suffice for him. He asked for nothing, desired no worldly comforts. Only power chinked the thick armor that cloaked him, the seeking of his birthright and destiny that arose Stannis' lust. And now, staring at the newly shaded map that was draped over his table, that same lust drove the one true king of Westeros to melancholy once faced with the obstacles. And such obstacles were many. Is it true? Davos pressed his lips together tightly. Hey, it's true. We received a raven from Riverrun today. Riventree Hall yesterday. He pulled the two folded scrolls out of his belt and handed them to Stannis. Both the Tullys and the Blackwoods are abiding by the same surrender terms to Daenerys Targaryen as the North and Wildlings, sitting the war out. Traitors? Stannis mumbled, though in all honesty he couldn't be bothered to raise too much of a hackle. Everything was just numb. Even after his legendary victory at Highgarden. We must send a force to destroy them. Send a message. A throaty cough directed attention to Lord Yorrice, the unofficial commander of the Vale forces. I wouldn't do that, Your Grace. Piercing blue eyes found the Lord of Roanstone, dark and unsettling, fire dancing within. Why is that, Lord Royce? Royce gulped. He was a renowned knight and fighter, but age had turned his brown hair to gray and his handsome face to wrinkles and chin waddles. They haven't taken up arms against you, and their loyalty is still secured. They simply do not have the strength to fight after Duskendale, most likely. They aren't worth the distraction of your attention, not with the Mad Lion and Dragon Queen facing against you. He makes an excellent point, Your Grace. The floor went to Littlefinger, alone among the men in the war room to eschew combat wear, instead clothed in a fine silk doublet. Besides, the Blackwoods follow the old gods, and Edmure Tully is Lady Sansa's uncle. We cannot afford to antagonize the North if we target either of them. Antagonize the North and we doom our cause in the long night. A figure in the snow, flaming sword in hand. Stannis would not deny himself his destiny. Fine, he turned to Davos. What news of Jon Stark? Their forces could have won 100 decisive victories and conquered a dozen cities, but the capture of Jon Stark would have driven Davos to pain even still. The boy was like a surrogate son for him, and it showed from the flicker of pain that crossed his face. We received a raven from Ser Barristan, hand to Daenerys Targaryen. It said that Lord Stark is being held on Dragonstone, and that he's alive on his honor. So, the old bastard finally showed his true loyalties. Stannis snickered, though his grimace was far from humorous. My cunt of a good sister and her bastard son were fools for cutting him loose, but he should have come to serve his true king. Said true king looked at another of his commanders. How is your loyalty, Selmy? Lord Aston Selmy bowed. I am loyal to you, Your Grace. And if it comes to it, can you be trusted to fight Ser Barristan if need be, like the Cargill twins? Everyone knew the story of the twin Kingsguards, each having chosen a different side in the Dance of Dragons. They were tasked to fight each other, and chose duty over family in their duel to the death. I will choose you, my king. Good. Stannis turned back to Davos. Can we get him back? I'm sure I could get a ransom price from Daenerys Targaryen, though she'll probably require immense concessions. One could only imagine what she'd demand. Unlike the rest of Stannis' war council, Davos didn't believe that she'd summarily burn them to death with dragonfire. No one that freed slaves in Slaver's Bay would be a madwoman, enemy or no. Always good to be realistic. Littlefinger smirked, rolling back and forth on the balls of his feet. By concessions, the good hand means that she'll offer you Storm's End in exchange for bending the knee. All fell silent when the king slammed his fist against the table. The only knees that will bend are those that pledge their fealty to me. His hand automatically went to his own leg, rubbing it gently. Hoping the ache there didn't mean the wound would open again. Our forces are strong, well rested. The Stormlands are prepared to go to war once more. All we need is Jon back, and you, Davos, will get him for me. The hand blinked. Your Grace? In a moon's time I will send notice to Dragonstone that I am sending you there to negotiate Lord Stark's release, but you are to leave now for Braavos. Braavos, Your Grace? That's all you hired before, the man that can sail the narrow sea in little over a week. Salad horse on. Stannis nodded. Get him to get you to Braavos. There you will pay off our loan with the Tyrell gold. Obtain another loan and hire the Golden Company. That will more than prepare us to storm King's Landing. Frankly, the ploy would be brilliant if it worked. But what about the negotiations? You will go to Dragonstone after. Davos, tell them nothing about the Golden Company, but get Jon back by any means. Promise anything, you understand? Will do, Davos bowed. Your Grace, I will go with him. All eyes turned to Melisandre. Why do you wish to go? Her red gaze met her king's, at least who, she said openly, was her king. Azor Ahai will be born among salt and smoke on Dragonstone. You have dragon's blood, and the Targaryen has brought dragons into the world. She inhaled slowly, hoping Stannis would buy what she was selling. The sooner Lord Stark is saved, the sooner you can return and become the prince who was promised. Stannis did understand. Me, a dragon rider. He did always feel a calling to the flames, never afraid of them when Melisandre conducted her fire rituals. Do it, go prepare now. Hells, everyone leave but Baelish and Tarly. Everyone complied, most talking amongst themselves. Melisandre was quiet, but with a ghost of a smirk. Davos similarly silent, but eyeing Stannis with worry, praying to the Seven that he be kept with wise counsel in his absence. Jon's absence was already greatly felt. The door shutting, Stannis gripped the bridge of his nose. "You know that there is no choice in bringing Jon back?" Littlefinger asked. "Aye," Stannis nodded. "He's doomed either way, much as I detest that fact. But pretending to negotiate leaves open the small chance, as well as distracting the dragon bitch while I deal with Cersei. With all his strength, all his power, going against the dragons was courting death. He'd have to play it smart and ruthless." At that moment, one of the Baratheon bannermen entered, offering a dispatch to the first person who stood, which happened to be Lord Randyll. Unfurling the message, his already infamous scowl deepened. "Seems we have a bit of a problem." "More good news?" Stannis asks sardonically. "From Old Town. Seems Lord Leyton Hightower passed away in his bed." Littlefinger shrugged. "Probably a bad heart." He slapped the table. "The cunt was older than all of us. I'm surprised he lasted this long." Shaking his head, Randyll glared at the man he considered nothing but a pimp. "The Archmasters of the Citadel performed the autopsy. Discovered the work of the Long Farewell. I know that poison." Stannis rose, eyebrow quirked up. "That's the same poison that Ellaria Sand used to kill Cersei's bastard daughter. It couldn't be a coincidence the same one killed Lord Hightower, currently the only house in the Reach that had yet to truly pledge to his cause." "That's what the Hightowers believe," Randyll continued. "The new Lord Baelor, he wishes for your permission to go on the offensive against the Dornish. Houses Redwine and Peak are mobilized behind them, and they wish to seek House Caron. Marsher lords, his best men." Rising from his chair, Stannis hobbled to the roaring fireplace, wishing he could see the same visions of his glorious future as Melisandre did. Perhaps they'd bring clarity. No, he'd have to rely on his own intelligence. "Bellish, what do your whores say of the Dornish?" With Qyburn working for Cersei and Varys for Daenerys, the brothel owner was his de facto master of whispers. A syrupy smile spread upon the lips of the Vale. "Lordling, aye, after Euron killed their lords at Sunspear, Arianne Martell has been having trouble reigning in the others. Half of the new lords are children, and many wish to sue for peace." Just the information he needed. "Tell Lord Baelor he may proceed, but he may not repeat the mistakes of the last Dornish wars. No desert campaigns, no getting bogged down. Seek the Martell armies, and wipe them out." Randyll bowed, making his exit. The king turned back to the flames, staring blindly, until a flash of the flickering inferno came to his vision. If he squinted, Stannis could just make out an image of himself sitting on the Iron Throne. "Soon, soon, it shall be mine."